All right, welcome everybody to another Tank Talk. This time, Missa Pandaria finally, and today we're specifically looking at Blood DK and Prot Warrior. We're going to be doing a deep dive with Riani and Cow, two super experienced tanks. Riani, it's been a little bit, dude, but I'm glad to have you back. Dragon Soul was the last time we talked. What have you been up to on the MoP beta since then?
MoP beta. No, I've just been running Dragon Soul day in and day out. I love it in there. A little bit sad to see MoP coming so soon. I just wanted to get a few more splits done, but here we are. No, it's been a while, and I'm happy to be back. Happy to be discussing some actual interesting stuff again. But yeah, I've been playing the beta too much. A lot of raiding, a lot of challenge modes, a lot of just nitty gritty, even like testing experience routes, testing pre-questing, testing stacking quests from other characters to bring into your main character. Anything you can think about, we've done it. And so we got a lot of experience from the MoP beta. And I'm going to try my best not to burn out before the expansion comes out, but I can't promise you anything.
Any particular tanks you've been focusing on MoP beta?
Yeah, mostly been prioritizing Guardian Druid and Prot Pal.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, my bread and
trying
butter.
to take over the whole market, right? Get that Guardian and Prot Pal
course,
experience, so you can be the WoW head writer for every single tank.
Every single tank, exactly.
That's the
So in
goal.
case of any of the other tank authors are watching, please, I'm sorry.
You got him with the crosshairs.
Yeah. No, but of course, Blood DK and Prot War has been my focus. It's what I write for on Wowhead, and all of the Wowhead stuff is in full swing. So there is a lot of nitty gritty stuff that's going on. A lot of theory crafting, and trying to do the best with what we can without sims as well. But it's going good. We've been cooking up some good tech, I feel like, and we're getting there.
Yeah, I've been taking a look at your Wowhead articles for both Blood DK and Prot Warrior. They're already pretty awesome, I would say. I feel like this early, like before release, normally the articles aren't like quite as good yet, but I was really impressed. Like, you have it, very thoroughly filled out already. I feel like obviously there will be some changes as we, look at the sims and everything, but it looks like it's in a pretty amazing spot already, given that we still got like a month and a half to launch.
Yeah, thank you. I've been putting a lot of work into it. A lot of hours.
Yeah, I mean, it shows. Great job.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And we're also joined by Cow today. Cow hasn't been on here before, but I've been watching Cow for years. I think the first time I started watching you, Cow, was probably in like ICC. So I guess like 2 years ago or so. But I always super impressed by Cow. If you guys look at Warcraft vlogs at all, you've seen Cow at the top of the rankings for tank DPS for a long time. Tank for who? Pretty much always, I think it's US first. Definitely always, way up there. But thank you for joining us, Cow. How's MoP beta been for you?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. MoP beta has been very interesting. Unlike Riani, most of my time is just spent on raiding. So I do appreciate Riani. Thank you very much for making those guides. It helps me out as well, that I don't have the time to deep dive like you do. So having a glance at the thorough article, you get to learn things like, oh, I'm going to implement this in the next run and see how that goes. And then deep dive my own logs and see how well that strategy works out. So yeah, that's basically been my MoP beta experience so far. It's a lot of raids.
Have you played all the tanks, or like kind of what's your experience with tanking on beta right now with which classes?
So I've made the UI for 4 out of the 5 tanks, missing only the Guardian, of course. My most favorite, the most exciting one. I'm saving that one for last.
I'm in the same spot. Yep.
Yeah, but I've done dungeons on all of them, and have only tanked raids on the DK.
Okay. Awesome. Well, perfect, because Bloody K is what we're going to start with. And Riani, let's start with you. As far as like overall performance for Bloody Ks, where do you feel like they are right now? Are they the best tank in the game? And what do they excel at? And what are maybe their weaknesses?
Yeah, so I know there are a lot of people out there that have been playing Bloody K for the entirety of Kata, riding the little bit of the train of the being the most OP tank in the expansion, and then they were hoping that, now with Mesa Bandera coming out, they will fall from their place of being the number one tank because Brewmaster's coming out, right? The new number one tank on the block. We all know it. We all know seen it from the private service and all of that. And it's going to be so much fun to play anything else on a Bloody K. I got bad news for you. Bloody K is certainly in a very, 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 very good spot in phase one. I would say kind of like undisputed number one spot. I'm not afraid to say it. And I think a lot of people that have been on the beta this weekend as well can also attest to the fact that Bloody K is in a really, really good spot. They have a rather low skill floor, I would say, or high skill floor, I guess. It's like, you can do pretty much everything you need to do in a Bloody K without having to really sweat out of your mind. But if you do play really well, you will be rewarded for that gameplay, and you will be leaps and bounds above anyone who is not optimizing as much as they might maybe should. And in terms of viability, overall, I'd say they're the best tank. I think you want to bring one to pretty much every raid, whether it's a 25-man or a 10-man. Even in a 10-man where Brewmaster, raid guard is more valuable. I think just the pure output and the healing from your blood worms is just too strong to give up on. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, comboed with a Brewmaster too, like you can get that 1-2 punch of you get the raid absorbs, and then the raid heals, which go together pretty well. And yeah, I mean, from what I've seen on Bloody K, it's pretty nuts. Like, I mean, the single target has been the highest I've seen. Even the AoE I've seen to be the highest. Other tanks seem to be able to compete pretty closely, but from what I can tell, on average, Bloody K is still higher even on the AoE damage. So it feels pretty good. And of course, you still have your really good kit of like defensives and all that stuff. And now you have, a cheat death too. And anybody who played a Prot Pally
exactly.
and Wrath of the Lich King knows how powerful Ardent Defender was. The stuff it just let you get away with lets you just play way more aggressively on average, because you always have that safety net of, if I die, I don't actually die, and it's pretty awesome.
It is certainly not as good as Ardent Defender with Purgatory, but it is still very valuable, and it does save you quite a lot of times. You always feel like you're playing on your heels whenever you have a Purgatory proc from before. Like, oh shit, I'm not as safe as I could be, and then just imagine not having a cheat death like every other tank. But yeah, it feels good. Feels good.
Cal, what about you? How are you feeling about Bloody K right now?
Having played with a very experienced brewmaster at my side, and then a prot warrior, he can play both really well. Him and I both agree that it looks like DK is going to be the MVP of the expansion once again. Not to spoil it for any of the other tank classes, right? But BDK toolkit has everything. It's leaps and bounds, I think, about any other tank, just because of how it functions with the self-healing, how you can, just fully heal yourself back with Death Siphon. You have still so many DR CDs of your own. Like you mentioned, you have Purgatory, but we still have Will as well, which, supplies you with a free heal and extra DR when you get low. Purgatory is like the icing on the cake, where you can just go to Vengeance Heaven and really abuse mechanics, and as long as the healers are ready for it, you know, you just get healed up real quick and you're back in it. So yeah, AoE, single target, no matter what kind of damage you're trying to produce, it looks to be one of the highest value tanks for sure this expansion.
So if we were to put this on a tier list, would you guys say S tier for Blood DK?
No doubt.
I would agree with that, yeah. I will
Okay.
say though, if you're trying to fill a comp with externals or buffs or whatever you're after, BDK is okay to still have as one of the 2 tanks, but it might not be S tier if you're really just trying to fill in that slot. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't
Especially
played
in
throughout MoP, but it might be interesting to see maybe 10-man comps that don't prio BDK
right. Yeah,
for that reason.
that's what I was just gonna mention too. In 10-man it could change a little bit. I think most of our collective experience is 25-man probably. I know Rihanna's done some 10-man raids. I think you mentioned they were like a little more casual raids, but
Certainly, yeah.
But overall for 25-man rating, I think we're all kind of in agreement. Bloody K, definitely standout tank right now. 10-man though, maybe some things could change a little bit, so we'll see on that.
Yeah, I will say that I think almost in 10-man, then I think the need for necessarily like having a specific tank is slightly diminished for sure. However, I will say that the difference in output matters so much more on 10-man. Right?
Absolutely. We
So
saw that in Kata too. Like a
yeah,
good Bloody K literally doing like double the damage of like a bad Bloody K. And in
yeah,
10-man, that's just such a huge overall like raid DPS increase.
exactly.
So you want to go over some notable changes. Obviously, all the tanks change a bit going into MoP. I feel like the Blood DK probably changes the least of any of the tanks. I haven't played Guardian Druid yet, so I don't actually know on that one. But all the tanks I've played, I feel like Blood DK changed the least. But you want to go over some of the big changes, Riani?
Yeah, so while I will say that they perhaps changed the least in the core aspect of like what it means to be a Blood DK, I still think that the changes that did happen are large enough to really have a huge impact and make them feel very quite different from how they felt in Cataclysm. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if I've ever told any of you guys this before, but in Mists of Pandaria, Blood DK, Blood Death Knights get a 1-second GCD.
Wait, no way. This is the first I'm hearing of this. Can you provide some sources on that?
You'll just have to trust me on that one. Oh man, it feels so good. I mean, I've been playing so much MoP, and going back and doing the weekly Dragon Soul clear with the guild just feels terrible. It just feels so bad. Oh my god, it's insane. Um, and I love the cat of Bloody K, but by playing with the 1-second GCD on MoP just feels so different and it feels so good. Okay, the 1-second GCD out of the way. Glad we got that sorted. Obviously, a lot of things are taken off the GCD as well. So not only do you have a lower GCD, you also have a lot of abilities that are not on the GCD anymore, like Dancing Room Weapon and Outbreak. No, not Outbreak. Dancing Room Weapon and Bone Shield. Both the runic power cost from Dancing Room Weapon is gone, but so is the Unholy Rune for Bone Shield. You obviously there's the Outbreak changes, right? Where it goes from a 30-second cooldown to a 1-minute cooldown. But that cooldown can be reduced completely by glyphing it so that it costs 30 ring power instead. You might not always want to run it because if you put on Outbreak on target, using Blood Boil on a target will refresh your dots. And I want to say right now as well, because I know some people will make this mistake when they pick their talents, that it is not roiling blood that refreshes your talent or refreshes your diseases. It's a passive called, what's it called again? Scarlet Fever. Yeah, it's your Scarlet Fever debuff that actually, passive that keeps refreshing your buffs. It's not Roiling Blood. Roiling Blood only spreads the disease to different targets. Your pets are kind of insane. Army of the Dead on like Stone Guards is doing 5 million damage from one use.
Decent.
5 million from one spell? Are you okay, Blizzard?
Not to mention
Race
it gives
Dead
you
is
a
also doing-
damage reduction too while you're casting it, right? It still gives
Yeah,
the parry
exactly.
dodge damage reduction.
Yeah, and since you're stacking parry, you know, yeah, Race Dead also do a lot of damage. It has its cooldown reduced. If you spec into a Death Pact, it doesn't actually kill the pet anymore. You get the heal, but you just take damage from the pet. The pet still lives. Scent of Blood is like a super core part of your gameplay now as well. Not only does it provide you with insane runic power when you're tanking at least one target, but it also gives you a healing increase with Death Strike. And if you're incorporating Death Siphons into your rotation, that means you have pretty much every single Death Strike you do 100% bonus increase with that Death Strike. Obviously, Vengeance. Vengeance is quite different in Mists of Pandaria. I'm sure we'll touch a little bit more on that later, but it does definitely impact how you play a DK for sure. And it does mean that there are some interesting things that we have to think about with, in terms of how we snapshot diseases, different breakpoints for when we use certain spells, and thinking about when we use cooldowns and stuff like that much more actively than we did in Kata, where we just had to make sure that, okay, we have a full Vengeance bar. That's going to happen from one swing. That's not the case in Mists of Pandaria anymore. Because if it did, that would be kind of broken. But
could you imagine just getting 500,000 plus attack power first swing?
Exactly.
It'd be incredible.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Obviously, there's a lot of other small changes, like you get runic power from using AMS again when you absorb damage. You have a way to reduce the cooldown of AMS with the glyph. You have different runic power regeneration talents. Your blood tap baseline is gone. And you have the option between a new version of blood tap, runic empowerment like you had in Kata, but then also runic corruption. It's just, of course, you have mass grip. Mass grip is insane. AoE grip.
So good.
One
of the best spells in the game all time for sure.
Undoubtedly. It's so nice. I think that's kind of the overarching things that have changed and some of the new things. But I mean, I feel like you get to really feel how different it is when you actually start playing the game, and especially once you start getting good at it. You notice how fun of a spec it really is.
Did you mention Soul Reaper at all? I might have missed it.
Soul Reaper as well. Yeah, your new execute at 35%. Oh my god, it's so insane.
Don't kill the boss. Let the Soul Reaper go off first.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah,
I get that 0.1% tick for maximum DPS.
Exactly. I had a 2 million Soul Reaper on Elegon during this weekend.
Jesus.
It was kind of nice. Yeah.
That's almost half an army of the dead.
That's insane.
Yeah, Cow, anything you want to add to that? Any changes that have really stood out to you for the Blood DK?
No, I think the DK Master has pretty much said most of what there is to say. In its core, the main change is just the GCD. Of course, there are a lot of little changes with the passives, but we're going to just basically be self-healing and chasing that vengeance to activate our damage. I guess that applies to all tanks.
Yeah, yeah, it really is kind of a new way of tanking where you're actually going out of your way to take more damage so you can do more damage and also more healing for some classes. Bloody K.
Yeah.
I think Bloodworms are the only thing that scale with attack power, right? As far as healing goes.
Those things
No, the
crank
scale with
sometimes.
health.
Have you noticed?
Oh, just health. Okay.
Yeah.
Um.
Sometimes they'll just heal their rate up with just one explosion.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been leaving
Mm.
my healing text on so I can see that every time, just green all over the screen. It's pretty nice.
200k on every single tank or every
Yeah.
single person. It's fantastic to see.
Actually, I
The
haven't played Bloody
overhealing
K
that you
since
see from the
the.
worms, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Another really nice change is that Bone Shield no longer requires a rune and is no longer,
yeah,
incapacitating you for a GCD or anything like that. You just press it whenever you'd like.
yeah.
So even more overpowered than it was in Cataclysm, which was already extremely
It
good.
was already so good. Yeah. Yeah, that was like one of the big adjustments for me when I was playing Blood Decay on MoP. I like when I pressed it, like my rune wouldn't go away, and I was like, "Did not cast? What's going on?" It's like, oh, it just doesn't cost anything now. You just press it. There's no setup for it. It's just press it whenever you want. So, yeah, Blood Decay feels so damn good though. But I don't know. For me personally, I've just played so much Blood Decay the last year. I'm trying not to play as much. I want to like branch out a little bit, but I'll be on it to some extent for sure. Gotta have at least one
One
Bloody
thing
K.
I will say about Bloody K's is that I think a lot of people have had this kind of similar experience to you, where they are not, they want to branch out, they want to play something different. And I feel like almost every single person that I've talked to that has been like super going hard on like brewmaster or a warrior or whatever else have all returned to Bloody K. They're like, yeah,
Really?
actually, after playing
Already?
it just feels too good, man. Yeah.
It is great. It's definitely fantastic. But I don't know. I'm a huge Prot War Brewmaster fan, so I want to try to play him if I can. But
Yeah.
all right. So let's move on to stat priority. What kind of changes to stat priority are we going to be seeing? Are we still going for haste, Riani, or what are we looking at here?
I mean, there could be a world, right? I don't see that being a world where we're in right now. I definitely think that we're gonna be seeing m- much more focus on avoidance because of our new riposte uh, spell, right? That converts our avoidance into crits, so we kind of get to double dip. We get some damage reduction because you do get a lot of damage reduction from as long as you take enough hits. I really don't like relying on avoidance as a damage reduction tool, because there is a chance that you just don't parry, right, and then your avoidance is so useless. But because we have so many things working for us with avoidance, Scent of Blood being a primary one, you get so much runic power, and if you get more runic power, you get more self-sustain, and you get more damage, of course. But then also converting 75% of that stat weight into pure crit is kind of insane. It's a really, really good double dip. It's not like you get 50% offensive value and 50% defensive value, but you get like so much value out of one stat. Kind of insane. So I suspect us to be going for hit cap, soft expertise cap,
Just soft
parry.
cap, not hard cap.
Yeah, so I think hard cap expertise is kind of bait. I might have to eat my words when we get to Sims, but there are literally only 3 spells or 3 things that are affected by hard cap. Because Rune Strike can't dodge or parry. Death Strike can't parry. It can dodge, but it can't parry. And we have a lot of spells in our rotation, which are affected by the soft cap, not the hard cap. So it's only melee attacks, hard strikes, which hard strikes, honestly, kind of whatever, and Soul Reaper. Soul Reaper is definitely big, but is it worth hard capping? That's 2,000, 2,550 stats. I personally don't think so, but I might have to eat my words when the Sims come out.
Okay, interesting. And so from there, hit cap, expertise, soft cap. What are we looking for after that? Are we going for parry or?
Yeah, so I mean, it's gonna be similar to cattle, right? Where you have a spectrum. You know, you have a full offensive spectrum, you have a full defensive spectrum, and then you have somewhere in the middle. The somewhere in the middle for us in Kata was kind of going down the haste build, right? Where we valued the offensive value that we got from haste, and then getting some decent defensive utility as well from it. So that was kind of our balanced perspective. And this time around, our balanced perspective, I feel like at least, is going to be avoidance, going down with parry and dodge. Everything after that kind of becomes very, very whatever. Mastery, I feel like, is really whatever in this expansion. You get 3,000 mastery from your from Blessing of Might or your shamans or whatever. That pretty much puts you at what, like 80-85% without a single piece of mastery. Like that is more than enough. If you have some heavy physical fights with like heavy bleeds and you want a main tank, you know, you can maybe go higher, sure. And haste, it does hurt to say, I don't feel like it's gonna be necessary in this expansion. You GCD cap pretty much all the time, assuming you're tanking, assuming you're playing somewhat well, and I just don't think that it'll have that much value. So it's honestly a case of after parry and dodge, you could consider going hard expertise cap, but probably more likely going down valuing crit more, maybe even valuing both strength and stamina, for the defensive value that it brings. Because in Mists of Pandaria, strength got a wild increase in the scaling to parry. So defensively, strength and parry has like a 1-to-1 coefficient. Like they are equal in value when you have kings on you. So I feel like when you go after the avoidance stats, you can kind of like go down whatever route and just have to like kind of figure out what it is that you want to do gearing.
Yeah. So just to mention on the strength parry thing too, that doesn't actually count toward your riposte. So that's one thing people should be aware of, is that you will get parry from strength and you'll get a lot of it, like Riani mentioned, but you aren't actually getting crit from that parry. It has to be actual parry rating, not parry from strength, which is like a separate thing. So
Exactly. So for example, if you have the wrist enchant and you have 180 strength versus 170 dodge, you might say, well, I'm gonna be a little bit more defensive, so I'm gonna pick up the dodge. No. That is not how it works. The dodge is actually the offensive option here when you compare the two. Assuming you have high enough vengeance for the 75% crits of that dodge to be worth more damage than the attack power that you get from strength.
yeah, that's another thing is we kind of have to shift our focus just as tanks in general, going looking more at secondary stats than primary stats, because you're just getting a huge amount of attack power kind of baseline now from vengeance. So you'll have 2, 3, even more 100,000 attack power just from vengeance. So any strength you're adding through gems, enchants, whatever, it's just kind of a drop in the bucket at that point, because you already have so much attack power. So we just kind of have to reevaluate like how we're looking at primary stats. They just aren't as appealing as they were before. But I mean, they are still good to some extent. But Basically, the more vengeance you have, the higher value secondary stats are, and the lower value primary stats are.
Yeah.
Cow.
I mean, I guess relatively speaking, because attack power is always going to scale linearly, but when you compare the two, then certainly, yeah.
Cow, how have you been gearing? I know you've done a ton of runs on Bloody K. What kind of stats have you been going for in your runs?
So we're looking into a prog scenario. I'll definitely say there's merit in having crit and not dodge parry and get a crit from riposte. And it's very situational. So I'll talk about that, not prog. For prog, it'll just be dodge parry, in my opinion. Secondary stats are far more efficient and superior to primary stats this expansion, like you said, because we don't really gain anything from stamina other than having a little more HP, which we usually don't need thanks to all the DRs, externals, and purgatory. And then strength mainly just gives you the parry, and 2 attack power for 1 strength is very, very inefficient if you think at it from that standpoint. So for prog, it looks like dodge parry will definitely be the way to go, just so you can be like this invincible killing machine. Having gained the crit from those stats and having DRW up, by the way, another incredible source for parry, right? So you can use that as a defensive and not feel so bad about yourself, except for execute. That you definitely want a DRW for execute with Soul Reaper. But yeah, I'd agree for the most part and say that maybe later down the road for dungeons, raid dungeons like MSV that are fairly easy and like entry level, there might be a world where crit is just gonna outweigh dodge parry for you personally, because maybe you want to army at a time where you don't have the riposte buff. You do have vengeance, but the riposte just didn't happen for whatever reason because you have to actually dodge or parry, right? For 20 seconds, you get the buff. I've noticed a lot of times that we're trying to snapshot our army, and then my crit will be just halved from the other DKs. So that'll
Oh,
be a
wow.
niche situation later on where you're gonna maybe on farm, maybe if the content's easy enough for you, you'd want to check that out. I do agree though that haste is the last priority due to how runic corruption slash blood tap work in this expansion, which is also slightly different since we haven't talked about a talents yet. I'll leave it for later. But yeah, that coincides with that as well.
Rihanna,
Yeah,
can
I'm
you
gonna be honest. That you said there's a world where you go crit. I think that world for me is week 2.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I
That's
mean,
pretty quick.
when people hear me talk and see how I play, they're instantly thinking I'm trying to grief everybody around me and just playing selfishly. But to be very honest, if you're at a high level guild, likely that farm world for you is gonna, be real very soon.
yeah.
It's just something to think about
Especially a
because
raid like
riposte is not always gonna
MSV.
be up.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
6 boss raid, not exactly the most challenging raid overall, I would say. So,
Yeah. I also want to say something though, because when we were talking about the snapshot earlier, Army does not snapshot its scales dynamically. So like if you Army on pole, for example, which is probably going to be suboptimal in most cases, then your army will still get the attack power values that you gain during the fight and gets applied to their current table. You don't have to worry about like snapshotting it necessarily.
I may have used that word incorrectly at the time, but yes, I'm absolutely aware. It's the riposte portion is what I was referring to. Within that is, so as an example, a boss like Yelagon, you might not get a dodge or a parry. He might miss you 2 times in a row, breathe on you, and then
Yeah,
you're doing some strategy where you're doing a bunch of army with vengeance on the opener, and then you just don't have the riposte.
yeah,
It's an edge case situation, a scenario, but that can happen.
certainly.
all right. Anything else you want to add on stat priorities, or think we're good there?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth mentioning that you will still have a very similar thing to where if you want to be the beefiest uh, DK boy that you can be, then you still prioritize stamina and mastery like normal. The only problem is that you're responsible for doing so much of your raid's damage in this area that you never want to go down that route. But it is worth mentioning that, you know, if there's a world where you literally cannot survive, like you are undergeared, the barrier between you killing the boss and not killing the boss is the tank's survival, and you just can't do it. There is no way. Like you're fighting Empress, and you're on the ads, but you can't survive it. It doesn't matter what you do. Then you know there is a world where you prioritize mastery more. You prioritize stamina, where the traits make sense, like trinkets and whatever else.
So, would you recommend people who want to go stamina mastery, would you also recommend them to go death pact then instead of death siphon, just so you don't even have
For
to
sure.
worry about pressing the button?
For sure. Yeah. I think for the average casual player, you would go death pact in week 1 prog. But it's kind of I think that's a skill level and healer trust equation.
I think once you go death siphon, it's very hard to go back. It's very hard.
For sure.
You're just missing something.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Let's go over the rotation real quick. So, Cal, you want to talk about rotation, and then we'll have Riani jump in after that.
Oh, I think on the contrary, I kind of like to hear what Riani has to say first.
Sure, absolutely.
He's the DK master.
I just kept asking Riani first every time, so I wanted to throw you the ball, but okay. Yeah.
Sorry, could you just repeat that real quick?
Cal. The
No.
The question. I thought you wanted the praise again. I thought you were like, yeah.
I was referring to the question.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Yeah, just the rotation. Like how does it change from Kata? You know, any differences from Kata basically?
Mm-hmm. So I mean, I feel like I'm using my own Wowhead guide as a little bit of a reference cheat sheet.
It's a good resource.
You know, as we're going through all of these. It's great that I did that. But like, if you look at the you know, the Wowhead guide, or if you look at, you know, any other guides that we're gonna make in the future, you might look at it and be like, huh, this is kind of similar to Kata. Look at this, like, look at the single target with priority. Okay, Death Strike. Yeah, Ruin Strike, Death Strike. We prioritize Heart Strike after Ruin Strike. This looks like more of the same. It's really not. It's really quite different. But if you just look at the spells that we're casting, quite similar. From a survival perspective, we always prioritize Death Strike. We really want to make sure we don't overcap on Runic Power, especially if you're running Runic Corruption or Blood Tap, which you should. Don't run Runic Empowerment. Don't do it. Anyway, then you know, you still prioritize using Rune Strike over Death Strike, even if you have a two Death Runes available. You spam it so much. Oh my lord, you use so many Rune Strikes. It's kind of insane. Especially if you have AMS up at some point where you're taking heavy magical damage, you cannot spend your runic power quicker than you get it. It's kind of insane. And then you have your Crimson Scourge, and Crimson Scourge still gives you a Blood Boil proc, which is nice because we need to refresh our dots somehow. But it also gives you a Death and Decay proc. And I don't know if you looked at the damage breakdown of your logs or whatever, but one Death and Decay does a whole lot of more damage than one Blood Boil does. So you want to make sure to incorporate Death and Decay into your rotation again. So you kind of feel like an unholy DK in this expansion.
Even for single target, right?
Mm-hmm. Even for single target. And especially for multi-target.
Yeah.
does a lot of goddamn damage if you have a lot of targets down. Obviously, you get to incorporate your Soul Reaper into rotation as your highest priority after you get to 35%. You still ideally want to use your blood runes for those Soul Reapers. So after 35%, I pretty much never press Heart Strike. Pretty much. Of course, if I have control over the situation, and I know I'm not gonna put my my next Soul Reaper on a longer cooldown than it has to be because I don't have any blood runes. Then I try to not really use that much below 35%. It becomes very much about playing around your vengeance to snapshot your diseases properly. And of course, we probably get into this a little bit more later, but we have a new developments in the Rune Forge situation. What we might be going down here. And so playing around with Cinder Glacier does add another layer of complexity, certainly with the snapshotting and when you use your procs and when you don't use your procs. And yeah, Death Siphon. Should we talk about Death Siphon?
We've been teasing it for a while. Yeah, lay it on them.
Yeah, so Death Siphon is part of your talents. So we'll talk about a little bit more about what you give up by going down Death Siphon later. But it's basically it's a damaging ability that takes a death rune, and then heals you for 150% of the damage that you deal. And a lot of people have been, in Miss Open Area, they didn't use Death Siphon at all. I'm so surprised. I've been going through the logs of even the top pumpers, and there was just no Death Siphon.
Did it change at all at some point?
What's that?
Did it change at all at some point? Like in 5.4, it became way better or anything?
No.
Oh,
no.
Interesting.
It did not. But what's interesting about it is that it has a way different attack power modifier compared to your melee strikes. Melee strikes essentially has they all follow a pretty similar formula, but then they'll have different weapon damage modifiers, basically. And Death Siphon does not have a weapon modifier at all. And that means that if you have a rather low weapon, eye level weapon, and you have like even a little bit of vengeance, like we're talking like with the 363 or 463 weapon, if you have 10k vengeance, it is a DPS increase for you to use Death Siphon over Death Strike.
Jeez. Okay.
And the further down you go, into the vengeance, pool, the more of a DPS increase it is to use Death Siphon over Death Strike. The downside is you don't get a shield from pressing Death Strike. That is a big blow to active mitigation. However, the healing aspect of it is arguably stronger. Depends on how much damage you've been taking and whatever else. But most of the time, the healing will be stronger from Death Siphon. And if you have a modifier on the boss, we're talking Elegon, we're talking Windlord in Heart of Fear. you're just every time you press Death Siphon, it's a lay on hand. It's kind of insane. And we're talking a little bit about Cinder Glacier before as well, but that's another thing. Because Death Siphon is shadow damage or shadow frost damage. So every time you have a Cinder Glacier proc, your Death Siphon gets buffed by 20% as well. I have like on the Wowhead guide, I have a whole page that's basically just about breaking down the different points at when you would press this ability, and even provided a formula as well for you to plug in your weapon damage and so you can always have it as a reference for whenever you progress into the expansion. But it is it's a pretty damn good spell, and I'm so surprised that I haven't seen more people use it, either on P server or in historical logs.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you happen to know if it was like not working correctly on P server or anything, or was it working the same as it is right now on beta?
So we might be practicing a little bit on some non-kosher servers,
Yeah.
and that siphon is certainly much stronger than that strike in from a DPS perspective
Okay.
there as well.
Interesting. Yeah. Something people were just sleeping on, I guess.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, Cow, what about you? Anything different, you've been doing with your rotation, or anything you're gonna incorporate after hearing Riani?
Uh, it's similar. I think the biggest thing that I don't do for rotation purposes is re-up my outbreak for new diseases with Cinder Glacier or with snapshotting with High Vengeance, but the death siphon portion of things definitely, again, it's got its niche uses where sometimes you just heal yourself to full. You know you're gonna take damage, and a lot of people forget that it's just one death rune and not two, unlike Deathstrike. So you very often, not just for a damage increase, you can understand damage is coming and straight up just heal yourself to full, or you can cast it because it's not really melee range, right? It's got a 40-yard range, so you can cast it away from mobs as well as you're kiting or running or whatever it is you're doing, and just top yourself off. Which other tanks don't really get that. So
Or
I did use it as a
even
buffer a little bit.
yeah, even when you're normally like you're not kiting or whatever, like Will of the Emperor, where you're doing the dance and you have to go out of melee range, having something to
Exactly.
press there, huge.
Yeah, but aside from that, the rotation has been fairly similar. D&D also very niche case that sometimes, you have a proc, but you don't wanna use it because you're only gonna have, like, one set of mobs left on Elegon, or, mobs are gonna move away from your D&D, you're not gonna catch but maybe one mob that you wanna kind of use Blood Boil, and for me, I've been prioritizing a lot of Blood Boil with procs over Heartstrike for sure, because Heartstrike can still parry, and I've been going for soft cap expertise, so that's the main source of getting parried for me is actually Heartstrike, it's just wasted damage. So I think it is might be sometimes even more efficient use of just even blood boiling on just a regular blood rune without proc. It seems like, of course, when you get to the Soul Reaper execute range, you always want to keep one rune, probably, just to hang out there for when Soul Reaper is up again, as it's on a 6-second CD. But yeah, other than that, it's fairly similar.
Okay. What are your thoughts on that, Riani? Using the Blood Boil over the Heart Strike with the Blood Rune.
I mean, like there will never be a point where on single targets, Blood Boil, where it will be a DPS increase from like the spell itself. But if you even have slightly higher vengeance when you use your Blood Boil compared to when you apply your diseases, then it's going to be a huge increase. So you always have to pay attention to your vengeance, but also your current snapshot on your diseases. And on the flip side, there is also a very real scenario where you have a good snapshot and you want to prioritize using Heart Strike even on multi-target encounters versus Blood Boil. Even though the initial hit of Blood Boil would be much higher damage, you're reducing your overall snapshot. And yeah. So that's basically the main crux of it. But and also, because of if you have a high snapshot vengeance, high vengeance snapshot on your target, and you want to spread your diseases with rolling blood, there might be or Blood Boil. There might be a big reason for you to not press Blood Boil, but to actually press Pestilence, to not have your current diseases refresh on your current target.
Oh,
Think of
interesting.
Elegon, for example, where you have a ton of vengeance after the normal phase, but then it all goes away. It all fades into nothingness. And so instead of refreshing your diseases on the boss and on all of the targets around you with the Blood Boil, you would instead Pestilence to keep the big snapshot on your main target.
Yeah, that makes sense. That honestly seems like the biggest change to me in MoP is just really paying attention to your disease snapshots and all that stuff. That's something we didn't really have to worry about in Cata. You're just got max vengeance instantly. Didn't
Don't know if you have
to.
to worry about that quite yet. That's a very high skill ceiling thing that most people, I would say, it's not that you should never worry about it. It's just if you're not a Riani that plays the game, you play the P server and then you play the raid, and then me, you're doing 1 weekend of 6 MSVs back to back to back. It might be worth it to first worry about the basics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that, as soon as you look at your snapshot, as soon as you're starting to think about things, you might not be moving as efficiently for your raid or pressing CDs or asking for them, etc. Which is going to be a big part later on for when we are all experts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, something to keep in mind is like all of us, well, I'm not sure if you played P server knockout, but all of us have at least played a lot of, the raid on beta and like been, going through a lot of stuff. And at least myself, I'm assuming it's the same for both of you. You didn't start out trying to min-max every little thing like the first time you played a MoP, Blood DK or whatever. You probably started with the basics and then have been, kind of progressing your way up, min-maxing more and more as you've gone. So what you're seeing like from us is like we're already like further down that progression. Anybody who hasn't played MoP yet, you got to start where we started. Like we didn't start out trying to min-max every little thing. Like start out, learn the basics, and then slowly just try to keep adding more onto that as you get more comfortable with the parts you've already practiced and learned.
Yeah, snapshotting diseases, doing Death Siphon shenanigans, tracking Cinder Glacier procs. This is so much less value than being able to properly track external raid cooldowns, moving out of shit on the ground, learning movement patterns for your raid, actually using your defensive cooldowns and using your toolkit as active mitigation. So so you don't worry too much about I'm gonna re-snapshot my vengeance, right, my diseases right now. Oh shit, I'm dead because I didn't press Death Strike for the last however many minutes.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like a pyramid. Like you set the foundation, you learn all the basic stuff, you get the most gains from doing all that stuff. And as you go up the pyramid, you're making smaller gains as you go up, but there are things you can improve on once you're like ready to get to that level. But you set the foundation first and you slowly build up to that. You don't just right out the gate try to be min-maxing Cinder Glacier procs, but you're messing up the actual like tank mechanics on the fight and stuff to do that and things like that. So start with the basics. As you get more comfortable with each like level of min-maxing, you can just keep going up. Definitely a very high skill ceiling, I would say, across the board in MoP. There's just so many little things you can do to gain damage, which becomes more and more important. It was already like pretty important in Kata, particularly in like 10-man raids we talked about earlier when the tank is a very high percentage of the raid's overall damage. But that is just going to go through the roof in MoP. You're going to be an even higher percentage of your raid's damage. So once you're prepared for it, definitely start learning like those little tricks you can do to get some more damage in. That'll just help out your raid.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of talking on the point of snapshotting as well. we've been talking about like how important snapshotting or diseases is. And you might conclude that, oh, this expansion is going to be so heavy on the snapshotting. You've heard everything about, oh, warlock snapshotting, this and that, and whatever. And to be honest, most stuff is dynamic. In Cataclysm, your army would snapshot, your pets would snapshot, your dancing rune weapon would snapshot. These things don't snapshot anymore. You don't have to worry about it. It's literally only your diseases. It is a big part of playing Blood DK properly, but it's not gonna be it's not gonna be a snapshotting bonanza like I expect.
And that is welcome news. Also, getting rid of all the pre-poll stuff, or at least most of it, is very nice. I don't know if you've been doing these
We'll see.
2-minute, yeah. Well, surely it can't be as bad as these 2-minute Dragon Soul pull timers, right? Surely.
2 minutes. That's a quick pull timer right there.
Oh no.
Nah, go down to 10 seconds. Actually, you know what? Just roll from trash into the boss because I have attack power from Vengeance. Just go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
vengeance and runic power and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think pretty much all tanks gain something from just being attacked outside of Vengeance. Like dodges and parries, give you Scent of Blood, and like Prot War gets Revenge procs, also gets Hold the Line procs. Prot Pad gets the Avenger Shield procs. Like, yeah, just being hit by more things, like more incoming attacks, is just so valuable in this expansion.
Yeah, indeed.
Um,
Prot pilots can of course do a little bit of pre-pull stuff with holy power, but
yeah, just pre-building. So let's move on to talents now. I know this is a big one people want to know about. Let me see if I can bring that up on the other screen. So starting off, I'm sure you just know them by memory right now, Riani. The first tier. What are we looking at here?
Unholy Blight. No. So our first tier is mostly around disease management. And you have two realistic options between Roiling Blood and Plague Leech. And Roiling Blood allows you to spread your diseases through using Blood Boil, which is a huge thing whenever you have even more than one target in the fight at any point where you have to spread your diseases. Enormous. However, it literally does nothing. Not a single thing on single target. It is absolutely a completely wasted talent on single target. And then you might conclude that you want to play Plague Leech. And I think Plague Leech is a fairly good talent, especially since it was buffed in Mists of Pandaria to go from to get 1 rune from consuming your diseases to getting 2 runes, which is kind of big. That's a whole death strike. Or 2 death siphons. The problem is that when you use it, you consume your diseases, and so then you have to reapply your diseases as well afterwards after you cast it. And so either you run with the glyph that reduces your cooldown or removes your cooldown on outbreak, and you can just use it like pretty much every 25 seconds if you want to, or you only use it every minute when you have outbreak available. And the problem is that even though you only have is it 1 second GCD? I think it is.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Even if you only have a 1 second GCD, Plague Leech takes 1 GCD. Using your ability is 1 or 2 GCDs, and then casting Outbreak is another GCD. So you have a minimum of 3 GCDs to press 1 ability. which is kind of doesn't feel great, but it is still it is still a good talent, I would say, especially on single target where you have literally no use for Roiling Blood. If you don't want to play with Plague Leech, you can actually play with Unholy Blight, and it would be a fairly okay thing to do because you can press it pre-pull, run in and apply your diseases, and every time that the diseases refresh, they get a new snapshot. You're gonna have low values at the start, and you're gonna keep getting a higher and higher snapshot as they get reapplied. And the benefit of doing that is that you're probably not gonna Dancing Room Weapon right on pull, so then you can use Outbreak with your Dancing Room Weapon to get a double application. But yeah, Roiling Blood is what you're gonna have in like most cases, honestly, because there is no pure single target fight. There is no patchwork, But there are fights where you definitely have a vast majority be single target, and then Plague Leech can be good.
Okay. So actually it sounds like a pretty interesting tier as far as the new talents go. I feel like for a lot of classes is, a lot of them are just kind of set and forget kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool that you actually have 3 potential choices here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next tier, obviously a pretty defensive tier. Big one here that just jumps off the page, obviously Purgatory, that cheat death that we talked about. But you also have the AMZ, which is the raid defensive. So are there any fights in your mind where you might take the AMZ over the Purgatory?
I don't think so in 25, man. Like, there is if you don't have an Unholy DK at all. But for the most part, your tank wants to run Purgatory. And you're probably going to have Unholy DKs in your raid in the first tier. That being said, if you don't have another DK, you're going to have to run it at some point. You're going to have to run it on Stone Guards if you're doing the stack strat, for example. And right now with the bugged Elegon, you might want to run it there too. There's even a case to use it on what's it called, Fang as well, right? But I think primarily as a tank, you always want to run Purgatory, unless it's really really required for your raid. That would be more of a 10-man thing.
I think it's a safe choice. AMZ you're gonna see though, there might be strategies for some fights. It's like you said, maybe it's a comp thing where you only have one BDK, or you're the only Death Knight or one of 2. But there are strategies that are already coming up on some bosses where, say, you said Elegon, right? So let's say you never want to go out of the circle and you just want to build stacks until you phase the boss. One strategy is you're gonna send externals and you're gonna mix them up. And so if you don't have enough Death Knights for that, not saying that you shouldn't run Purgatory, but that could be a scenario where you're getting asked, "Hey, do you mind running that AMZ so we can have an extra, an extra set of ads where you just stay in and not die?"
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I gotta ask though, any use case for Lichborn at all?
You want to know the worst part?
What's that?
It's actually an okay.
Oh yeah.
Talent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because of Death Coil AP healing scaling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scales really well. Like, you will get actually like big heals from it. Like 200k heals for sure. And if you're running Blood Tap, it gives you stacks for blood charges. Okay. Yeah, whereas it didn't give you Ring Empowerment procs in Kata. Still doesn't, of course, but if you're running Blood Tap, then it does give you stacks. That being said, even though it's big heals, right? I don't know if it's worth, giving up the rune strike damage.
I think we'll leave that one to the PvPers. Let them have it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the biggest drawback is, of course, being on the same row as Purgatory.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Pretty awesome row there. So next one, this is kind of mobility slash reducing mobility of other things. You got asphyxiate the stun, turns strangulate into a stun. You got chillblains to reduce movement speed and root, and then death's advance. This is pretty exciting because BDK has always been a very immobile tank, so this is like a little sprint you get, and you also get this passive 10% move speed as well, just at all times. And I believe that stacks with the movement speed boot enchant too, right?
Not
I
only does
don't
it
think
stack,
so.
but they
Yeah.
also boost one another.
They also boost
You
one
you
another?
f you can free it, basically. You can free your boots, enchant slot instead of
Well,
having to go for movement.
No, they work with one another.
yeah, they stack though, right?
Are you sure the, passive works with the other passive?
Mhm.
I haven't tested, okay.
Yeah,
I believe when I
so
looked at it, it at least changed my tooltip. I guess I haven't, like timed myself like running somewhere to make sure it's not just a tooltip bug, but I believe on the character sheet it does actually stack.
yeah, and you get a total of 119% movement speed.
Pretty nice.
Instead of 118, the 8 plus 10.
Yeah.
So
It actually, yeah, it shows
That's kind of
119,
insane.
you're right.
That is kind of insane, yeah.
yeah,
And then what does it bring your movement speed up to? Because it
119 or 140 with the active.
140 with the active, yeah. Oof. Yeah, that's pretty nice. And then also the effect that you can't be reduced below 70%. I don't know how useful that is in PvE. Excuse me, but yeah, in PvP I remember this being kind of crazy too.
yeah.
Yeah, so on this tier, basically always taking Death's Advance, or have you found some uses for the other
Mhm.
two?
The Spirit Kings, Asphyxiate. Again, it
Asphyxiate.
depends on the comp, but even using you as a backup, it gives you an extra kick for no rune requirement on a 30-second CD. Strangulate actually becomes Asphyxiate, which is a very overpowered second kick. And a stun, of course, for, the
Mm-hmm.
archer that debuffs you with sleight of hand.
Yeah, we noticed that a lot, that we had problems getting cooldowns that were low enough to be used on every single um whatever plunder thing, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And it has a 30-second cooldown for a 5-second stun.
You basically have it
That
up for
is
every single time you'll cast it, and then it also acts as
exactly.
a second kick for the other next 2 bosses after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So within one encounter, you have many multiple uses for that over Death's Advance, which is not really advantageous to you because if you're in a tight spot, you're probably going to boots out anyway. And then
Yeah.
AMS, of course, for full RP when you backfire.
Indeed.
Yeah. Death's Advance definitely nice on like Will of the Emperor if you're ever you'll have it up each dance pretty much. Yeah, 30-second cooldown. Each dance you'll have it, and so if for some reason you're like falling behind on getting to where you need to go, can throw that every time.
Yeah. Don't sleep on Chillblains for challenge modes either, though. It's quite a powerful kiting tool, especially when combined with Roiling Blood and Glyph of Pestilence.
Yeah, you can kind of just kite
very well.
forever.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
essentially like piercing howl, but you're also doing damage at the same time.
Piercing howl where you do basically I don't know, 80% of your damage while still kiting.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've seen that
Kind of
used as
insane.
well. The Chillblains might be useful for actually like staggering the first closest mobs to you and then kiting around so you can gather everything up into a nice either Gorping Grasp or just kiting them around in a circle to
Yeah.
gather all the mobs for everybody.
Nice.
Seen that in CMs as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely seems
Quite
like
powerful.
lots of good use. Okay, so the next tier we got a lot of our healing stuff. We've been talking a lot about Death Siphon. Let's start with Death Pact just because it's the first one on the row. How are you feeling about Death Pact, Riani?
Death Pact's great. I think this is what 95% of people should play on progression. Depending on their gear level, I will say. But yeah, Death Pact is great because its cooldown is synced up to your race set, which is great. And also doesn't kill it anymore. And it's now 50% health. A 50% heal is kind of insane on a 2-minute cooldown. So it's really good, and of course, if you proc Purgatory, it's a really good tool to get yourself out of that as well. It does suffer from being on the same row as that Siphon for sure, but I think it's a really powerful talent, especially if you're not willing to min max with that Siphon.
With the raid AoE damage and stuff on fights, hitting pets, do you ever find that Death Pact does kill the pet, or that's pretty much never something that really happens realistically?
It's something I've noticed, no.
Okay.
I haven't seen it kill any pets, but I think the biggest bonus for Death Pact if you're a beginner is that it doesn't cost any runic power anymore. It's free.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very good quality of life change if you're actually trying to get a heal from that.
All right, and Death Siphon. We've already talked about this quite a bit, but sounds pretty awesome. Tons of damage, tons of healing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Should get you out of Purgatory instantly, right? With
yeah,
I've
seen that before. Yeah.
And conversion. Is there any place for this, or the other two are so good that it doesn't really have much room?
Yeah, so the place for conversion is actually in the bin.
Okay.
Yeah, the trash can.
I think instead of giving you something, it actually just takes from you, is the thing.
It's a net healing loss, right? Because of the you can't get procs from Scent of Blood when it's active. So you get so much less runic power regeneration, and which means you're gonna have less runes to do death strikes and whatever.
Okay, fair enough. And this next tier, this one I feel like is probably going to give the most people issues, like when they first look at it, like trying to figure out what the best thing is here. So yeah, you want to go over this, Riani? We got this Blood Tap, new version of Blood Tap first.
Exactly. So new version of Blood Tap. I want to mention. No, let's go over Blood Tap first. Yeah. So whenever you use Rune Strike or Death Coil, you get 2 charges of blood charges, and to get 1 rune back, fully depleted rune, you need 5 stacks. So that means that effectively every 2.5 runic power spender, you get one rune. Ideally, you want to you don't want to macro this into some ability and just have it as like a passive generation tool, but actively think about how you use it. In a progression setting, you ideally want to maximize your death strike usage. So that means that you want to store up at least 10 charges and use it at the same time. But you can also desync your runes, meaning that you put your blood rune on, you turn your blood rune into a death rune, and then you have one normal death rune, so to speak, that's desynced from everything else, and then you only need another 5 charges to get a full death strike out of that. So it's kind of like you play around with your charges in order to funnel them into blood runes, and that's another thing to pay attention to as well, is that they always prioritize blood runes. So if you have 2 blood runes on cooldowns, they will always prioritize that blood rune. But yeah, this is the talent that will get you the most death strikes, and the most death strikes when you need it too. I think it's also gonna be a very interesting talent to use when you want to like only press Death Siphon, because it will work fantastic with that talent as well, and then you don't have to think about, you know, desyncing your runes and stuff like that. It'll just use it like pretty much, all the time.
Okay, awesome. So you think this is, if you want to pay more attention to what's going on, you think this is like the top choice?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And then Runic Empowerment. Anybody who played a Cat Bloody Case should be well aware of this one. It's just the system we had before. You use your Runic Power Spenders, you have a 45% chance to refresh a depleted rune, or fully depleted rune. So it's just more of the same. Where do you see this fitting in?
I don't see it fitting in.
Okay.
The problem is that without the Kata rune tap or blood tap, blood tap.
I always mix those two up too.
Yeah,
it's gone
it
backwards.
Becomes exactly it becomes kind of useless. Because in theory, like if you just look at the tooltips, Runic Empowerment actually gives you the highest theoretical rune regeneration, because the other 2 talents will give you roughly 40% of a rune for every rune strike, whereas Runic Empowerment gives you, in theory, a 45% or 45% of a rune every rune strike. However, the problem is, what the hell are you gonna do with that rune? You're just gonna have desynced runes for the entire time. Imagine you deplete your runes, all of your runes, and like, okay, now I can press Rune Strike, which is another thing to talk about. You can't just press Rune Strike all the time. You have to have full depleted runes. So you're gonna overcap on Runic Power a lot. Anyway, you get a proc from Rune Strike. You have 1 rune. Now what? Now you need to get another proc within, what is it, 7 something seconds, for you to even be able to use that rune. Otherwise, it's just wasted. You kind of bank on getting back-to-back procs, and if you don't, you're kind of not really getting any bang for your buck. So I don't think you should ever run Runic Empowerment in Miss Pandaria.
Okay. So, I mean, that brings us to the only other choice we got left, then Runic Corruption. So this one is it is somewhat similar effect, but it's actually going to increase your rune regen rate instead of just giving you a rune. So that'll affect all your runes at once. So is this one you're looking at as a good replacement for Blood Tap then, if somebody didn't want to play Blood Tap?
For sure. This is like the set it and forget it. I think it has potential to give you like really high damage output as well. But one of the main advantages is that you don't have to worry about fully depleted runes. If you have, assuming you have like 1 rune on cooldown, you will, 1 death rune, or 2 death runes, on cooldown, then you can just spam Rune Strike to make sure that you don't overcap, and then you can use your runes again. And it keeps stacking on top of each other as well. This, if you get a proc of Rune Corruption and you press Rune Strike again after and get another proc, it just increases the duration. It doesn't like replace it. So it's really forgiving. It's a very, very forgiving talent. Whereas, Runic Empowerment, if you use Rune Strike, but you don't have all fully blooded runes, you don't get any value. You can also overcap on blood tap, on your blood runes, and be forced to use your death runes in order to proc or to be able to use your blood taps, but that's gonna overcap you on runic power and stuff like that. Runic Corruption is super, super forgiving. If you don't play perfectly, you will still get the full value pretty much all the time. So that is the main benefit of Runic Corruption, I feel like.
So we talked before about, mastering the basics before you kind of move on progressing through min-maxing. Is this something you would recommend most people start with before they do blood tap?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Cow, have you played with all three of these or a couple of them, or what have you found that you like the most here?
I'm agreeing with Riani 100%. Runic Empowerment, it kind of loses its value because now they make you choose either Blood Tap or Runic Empowerment, whereas before we used to have, both on a basic level. Now, Blood Tap, when I did play with it in Raid, it's like you said, subtle. It's just another thing to worry about, which you're not really trying to do if you go fast or you don't have the brain capacity and brain space to think about snapshotting and blood tap storage and all of these things. I think if you're playing in a perfect sim, basically, is where you would take blood tap, or if you're at an expert level and have done the encounters hundreds of times, by that point you should be at a mastery level that you have the brain space, all the mechanics, you're automatically moving. But otherwise, I personally prefer Runic Corruption as a non-expert DK for sure.
Okay.
Even as an expert, I feel like if you're playing content that you haven't cleared over and over and over, I still think you should run it.
Okay, awesome. And our final tier here, this is, I mean, we talked about this a little bit. Anybody who's like played retail, anybody who's played retail knows about this one. That Gorfine's Grasp, that AoE Death Coil. And a lot of people misunderstand this spell too, so we should go over that too. You actually cast it on someone. So it's not just everything gets pulled into you. It can be if you wanted to, but you can cast on somebody 30 yards away from you, and it'll drag everything to them. So this thing is just insanely powerful. Like, it would be crazy enough if it only dragged things to you, but the fact that you get to choose like where it drags things, it's just so insane. What's been your guys' experience with this? I'm sure you're loving it.
It's the best thing ever, I think, for both CMs and definitely for Raid. It's actually funny because if you have multiple DKs and great minds think alike, you might actually sync up with another DK and waste it. Because everybody wants to know the best results.
Definitely.
Just give me all the mobs in one spot and give it where I want it. So placing a totem somewhere, when I say totem, it could be a pet, anything, right? A placeholder on the floor that you want all the mobs to go to, and there they are. It's crazy.
Yeah, in particular, like Will of the Emperor. I'm sure you guys are probably playing around with the strat too. Yeah, gripping everything together, rooting it together, all that stuff. So
yeah, that's where DKs become a big part of the comp.
Yep.
Is it even worth talking about these other two? Are there any times you guys see you might use these other two over Gorfine's Grasp?
I used the Desecrated Grounds on Spirit Kings when in the first weekend because the arrows would always go on the tank.
Yes, that was a fun time.
We just
so Desecrated Ground would clear the arrow when you got it. So
oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you could IBF out of it. So what we did is just get our other tank would bait it out. He would just taunt it every time out and away from people. And as he would roll, he would cast it on, on nothing, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
But that's not required anymore. So
nope.
Yeah, that was an interesting test. Between all those Spirit King bugs, like the Annihilate following the tank, That Rain of Arrows one, obviously the like 10-second lag on every single poll.
God.
I was very happy to see all that stuff got fixed. I think
Yeah.
90% of things got fixed on that second test. So that was encouraging at least.
Indeed. I mean, Remorse's Winter is pretty okay in like a dungeon setting if you don't have a bunch of stuns. But even so, you want to have at least one mass creep in your group, right? So that's only like situational if you have an Unholy DK as well. Either you or the Unholy would swap over to Remorse's Winter, but yeah, you pretty much set Gorfin's Grasp and you never touch anything else again, pretty much.
All right. So what I've got on here right now, I guess, is kind of our typical loadout you're looking for like a newer DK that's just getting into everything. We talked about like Death Pack versus Death Siphon. Obviously, once you're comfortable with that, you can do Death Siphon. And then the Blood Tap versus the Runic Corruption, you can make that change as well if you feel comfortable with that. And then depending on AoE single target stuff, you can change that top row as well.
Yep.
All right. If you guys don't have anything more on talents, we'll look at glyphs then.
No, let's do it.
All right. So are there three? So we should mention, I guess, beforehand that we downsized glyphs a little bit in MoP. We don't have the, prime, major, minor anymore. Now, I think they're just calling them major and minor. Is that right? Or are we calling them prime and... Okay. Yeah, so we just have the major and minor, so you're going to have 6 total glyphs. And kind of their whole philosophy on glyphs just changed in MoP too. You don't really have those glyphs anymore where it's like your, shield slam does 10% more damage. Like those just super obvious, just damage increases kind of choices. We'll talk about Prot War later. It sort of actually does still have that stuff, so maybe that was a bad example. But yeah, in general, most of these are very different in kind of the way they function compared to old glyphs. But are there like 3 that jump off the page to you, Riani, that you would basically always use, or maybe even just literally always use?
I think there are 2 that stands out.
Okay.
And the third one that you pick, I feel like is very situational and like what you prefer as well. And I think there was one glyph that you should always run if you feel like you are maybe struggling on with your diseases. But let's start out with the one glyph that I think everyone should have, and that is glyph of Regen Magic. Basically, it gives you cooldown reduction on your AMS based on how much absorb there is left when it's fully expired. And it's up to 50% cooldown reduction.
Pretty
which
insane.
is kind of nutty because
that's crazy.
Yeah, because you will have a lot of fights where you literally just use AMS for runic power. For example, on Will of the Emperor, they have this passive ticking damage, right? You increasing decreasing the damage with AMS from that, so inconsequential, but you still use it all the time because you get runic power from it. So it's just a constant stream of runic power. And then you are done with your duration, and your AMS basically gets reset to 50% with cooldown reduction right away. Because it doesn't absorb the whole thing, right? Fantastic. Another glyph that I think is really good is a glyph of Festering Blood, which gives your Blood Boil the damage amp from having diseases, even if they don't have diseases, which is 50%. 50% damage increase is kind of a lot. And you might think, well, I'm going to have diseases to all targets all the time. And that's That's true. However, when you spread your diseases with blood boil, the first application of that blood boil does not have diseases on them. So you just boost that blood boil by 50%, which is kind of huge, especially if you have a constant stream of new applications all the time.
So one thing I had a question about, I can't remember which Blood DK glyphs come in the later patch, which we, I guess, aren't sure right now if we're going to have all the glyphs right away. Are these glyphs that originally came, I think it was 5.2, 5.3, 5.4? Yeah. Are any of these those glyphs that we may not have on launch?
Both of those.
Okay.
But they are on the beta right now. They've been purposefully implemented on the beta as well because they weren't at first.
Okay.
And Blizzard wasn't sure how they were going to deal with it. But from everything we have so far, we can assume that they will be in at launch.
Awesome.
And then the other two is the first one is Glyph of Pestilence, same as in Cata, just increases your range by 5% or 5 yards. Which is only really good if there's like certain applications, right? The main places where I noticed it is Elegon, when you're spreading your diseases to the stars, when they spawn in the intermission, but then also on Empress in Heart of Fear, in the intermission, if you have the off tank somewhat close to where you are, with your two big mobs, then you can spread your diseases a lot easier if you have the glyph on as well.
Yeah, I noticed it a lot on Elegon. Also, you don't even need to be like in Elegon center, so that's one thing people should be aware of. Like, you can be on the side of wherever your spark is, that you're going to be killing. And from there, you're like, the pest is going to be off the boss, so it'll actually just travel to the whole other side of him and just hit everything. You don't need to, make sure you're dead in the center or anything. So that was really, really nice.
Yeah, definitely a big one there. And then the last one I think that's realistically worth considering is Glyph of Outbreak. This is the one we were talking about earlier, where you remove the cooldown of Outbreak, but it costs 30 running power. It's realistically, it's not insane because you kind of theoretically just need to apply it once. However, there will be cases where you're like, oh shit, my debuffs fell off. I'm stupid. There will be cases where you go out and fight mobs away from where your current deceased target is, and then you will have to Icy Touch and Plague Strike. Ugh, God.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
You have disdain from it. It's funny because I've actually had to do it, and I think even on opener with very little vengeance is something I've been doing in order to not run that glyph. I will not be pressing Outbreak until I'm ready for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With a snapshot. Exactly.
Of course, your blood boil does keep like refreshing the snapshot, but especially like if you don't want a dancing room weapon right away, then you want to have Outbreak available for when you press that dancing room weapon to get the double application. So that is yeah, I like Glyph of Outbreak at the moment, actually, even though it's like people see it as kind of like a noob bait glyph because it seems great, but like if you play it correctly, then you shouldn't need it. But there's so many places where you want it. There's so many times where you change targets away from your other pestilence target. There is the dancing room weapon angle on pole. If you're not running with Unholy Blight. I think it's a nice glyph. I think it's nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one you'd recommend most people run. So it'd be the
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so typical loadout, we'd be looking at festering, regenerative magic, and outbreak. You think as kind of the just
Like if we're
standard?
keeping this new player friendly, then I definitely think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think for most people listening, that's probably more of the angle. Just like we talked about, just mastering the basics and then kind of moving on.
Yeah, you just have to
The
keep in
expansion
mind
isn't out, so people should be new players.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
there will be the cases where pestilence is pretty much necessary, just like you said on Elegon. So those are like encounters that you want to have a WeakAura for or whatever, because you will definitely want to have that on.
Agreed.
Something to tell you, hey, you don't, you're gonna lose out on all diseases on all the charges or sparks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other glyphs in here that maybe have like niche use cases?
We haven't talked about the minor ones, right?
Well, the
We'll do
minor
the
ones will
minor
be
ones next. Yeah.
useful for sure, but in addition to these ones in major, like if you don't get any value from festering blood, for example, you could run Glyph of Loud Horn, which basically just gives your Horn of Winter additional runic power, but it also increases the cooldown by 100%. So it's like if you're GCD capped, then this is a great glyph to have because you're not going to be able to press Horn of Winter off cooldown every single time. So this will lead to more runic power regeneration. One thing to notice as well is that glyph of AMS seems great, but it's actually not that good. The problem with having all 100% of the magic damage be absorbed is that you also get way more runic power way more quickly, but you can't spend it all. So ideally, you want to run without it, and then especially if you're running with Glyph of Regen Magic, that also means that they kind of counteract each other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Glyph of IBF could have its situational use, reducing its cooldown by 50%, but also reducing its duration by 75%. But if you think of like Impale on on Madness, then this glyph would have been huge.
Yeah.
But normally you would never run it.
Any others that stand out to you at all, Cal? For niche
just
niche
the four we
use?
talked about, I think, for sure.
There's one niche use.
Yeah.
You can use Glyph of Shifting Presences if you want to swap into Unholy Stance during the dance on Will. But probably not.
Do you lose your vengeance when you do that though?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's very much like you're really struggling with the dance kind of thing. Get the extra move speed. Okay. I got you. Take a look at minors. Maybe should phrase that differently. Minor glyphs. Anything standing out here, Riani?
Army. Sorry.
Army.
Army. All right. That's about it. Nothing else. Chat is blown up.
If you're just gonna put a glyph on, you could put a couple other ones, but yeah, it's just
we got caught.
PvE.
Sorry, what was it, Cal?
Oh, I was just saying, if for PvE it will be just army, and then you can just add, the resilient grip or whatever else you feel like, or your how the army looks. Might want to make it look different.
Oh yeah, make it look.
I think
might be a
DPS
DPS increase.
Is the long winter as well. You probably won't have it ever fall off, but like if you're like dungeon running and stuff like that, you're not gonna be pressing Horn of Winter all the time. Might as well just have it be 1 hour.
Sure.
And
yeah, you're gonna get a million runic power from, you know, tanking a million things that are all giving you scent of blood runic power.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So army, the big one. And then wherever you guys feel like on those other two. All right. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Got that pretty fleshed out. So this next one, we're gonna be another controversial issue. We're talking about race here. How are you feeling about best Bloody K race, Riani?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because the best DK race is actually Alliance.
Oh,
Yeah.
we looking at Worgen? We looking at human? What are we looking at?
Looking at Worgen. Just 600 raw stat crit and a speed increase.
Pretty
Yeah,
nice.
That's good. That's good. But other than that, let's talk about the real faction right now. Let's talk about Horde again. It's gonna be pretty much down between Orc and Troll, just like in Kata, where Orc will be your general preferred pick, and Troll will be insane on beast bosses. And there are a fair bit of beast bosses in this expansion. I think it's like 8 or something like that. So on those bosses, you'll be happy to be a Troll.
All right. Any thoughts on that, Cal?
I would ask, does army or ghoul scale with the pet damage from orc?
So I need to go out and get some conclusive data on that, because I did mention that in the racial section, but I need to get more conclusive proof about that, because it does increase Death Knight pets, right? Now whether that is technically only if it's guardian pets, or if it's your pets that has your has like a command center, I'm not sure. I need to verify
So
that
then it will
myself.
be like a niche case. Do I want to go for troll, or let's say maybe berserking in the execute phases with the RW and everything stacked might be a little higher value than orc? Or do you think
Mhm.
not? Despite maybe not gaining damage from pet, because we're just looking at blood fury and expertise, right? As orc.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not totally sure. Um, I don't
But then would you
think.
consider troll a clear winner when it comes to the beast bosses, or no?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if there's a world where troll is better um on just on non-beast bosses. And that world would be like if you somehow manage to get the sword from your previous, and so you don't use an axe, um, or if you have like an insane amount of vengeance on a specific fight, and that haste just doing so much more work than the expertise would be. I don't know. Don't know.
Okay.
But that's my read at the moment, at least.
Okay. So something to keep tabs on.
Yeah. Either way,
Um,
the difference is going to be very, very minor.
okay. And then professions, another big one, you know, people are asking about. What professions are we looking at?
You can take this one, Cal.
Professions. Yeah, so we talked about it earlier, just like we talked about the stat priority. You basically be going for your, I'd say you'd go engineering and blacksmithing. I've heard people who want to go tailoring, but if for somebody who's not trying to worry about anything but the basic gameplay, me personally, I would go for engineering with blacksmithing.
What's
Why
the tailor?
tailoring?
Yeah, what's the tailoring angle?
Uh well, I'm not gonna disclose that some people had some testing that they did,
Oh, okay. Secret tech.
but it might not be
Okay.
anything worth considering for BDK.
Oh,
I do think that the
Rihanna's
extra
intrigued.
gems are really good. So you can choose your path, whether it's crit or parry or whatever you're into over
Mhm.
main stat or primary stat. And then engineering, I don't think you can ever replace now the glider boosts. Boosts, like I said, sometimes the AMS, man, you backfire
Oh
and you just
god, I
full
didn't even
RP
think about
for
that.
free.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
like if you're at the end of the fight and you know you're not going to use boots, you can just send them off and hope that they fail, so you can get
That's
AMS ring
wild.
power.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, in general, I see engineering blacksmithing as the go-to for every tank. Um,
Yeah.
there are like some other choices you can make for the blacksmithing side. If like I don't know, there's some profession you absolutely love. I don't know. You could do it. You'll obviously lose some stats. It won't be ideal, but every profession gives something now. But engineering blacksmithing, kind of just the go-to. Um,
Yep.
any tips or tricks you guys have figured out? I guess start with Riani. Any? We've been talking a bit about like some of this min max stuff. This would be the time to just like fully, go into that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of laid my cards on the table. Um, I feel like I'm so excited to talk about things that I find out that I never have the opportunity to keep on a competitive advantage at any point. I find a cook and we just lay it out on the table right away. um, we could talk a little bit about Cinder Glacier. Um, since that's a thing that people haven't really been considering before.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
And just yeah, so just real quick, it is a proc that gives you 2 charges of a 20% damage amp to any frost or shadow spells. And that would include Soul Reaper, Death Siphon, Blood Boil, and Death Coil, and Death and Decay. Um, using Soul Reaper, Blood Boil, or Death Siphon consumes a stack. You get the damage increase, but it consumes a stack. But if you have Cinder Glacier up and you press Death and Decay, and Outbreak, they get the damage amp, they get the snapshot, or actually, the Outbreak gets the snapshot. It doesn't consume a charge. If you use Death and Decay, you get the damage amp while the buff is active. Doesn't consume a stack, but the damage amp fades if you use up your 2 stacks.
Wow, that's crazy value.
Yeah, and using Blood Boil will, on multiple targets, will consume 2 stacks, assuming that it's hitting more than 1 target. However, you will get the damage amp for every single target that it hits, and the snapshot of diseases will also be applied to every single target that it hits. So that is kind of nutty when you get high vengeance, and it does have a pretty good proc chance as well. I was looking at a log of Will of the Emperor, and out of the last 10 Soul Reapers I did, I had the buff for 8 of them. So
Wow,
yeah,
very nice.
yeah.
Do you know what the proc chance is? I'm not sure if you mentioned that.
I'm not 100% sure of the PPM, but it does have a PPM. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's our PPM or if it's a good old PPM, um, but yeah, I'll have to cook a little bit further there.
Okay. Uh,
Um,
yeah. Any other tips and tricks you got?
Yeah, one thing I would want to mention as well is if you're running Roiling Blood and you Dancing Room Weapon and Outbreak for double application, and you use Blood Boil, the targets around you will not get the double application spreading of pestilence. But they do get them if you use a good old-fashioned pestilence. So it's certainly a good idea when fighting, for example, Stone Guards. When you use your double application of Outbreak to press Pestilence instead of pressing that one blood rune of Blood Boil.
Okay.
Hmm.
You got
Is
any?
there anything else?
You got any tips or tricks, Cal, that you've been using?
Oh, I think mainly if you follow Riani's guide, you're good to go for tips and tricks. I think what it'll come down to in terms of, other than surviving, we've played tanks for years, so it's kind of always the same thing. Now the added layer of, I think, Vengeance adds so much to the table that you want to be versatile enough to know how to use all the tips that are like dry tips on the guide, just written. It's not always applicable to do everything. And you have to really, really understand, like, encounter IQ is going to play a huge part, I think. Sometimes more than skill. Knowing when you're going to get your vengeance might not be the most attractive thing to think about. Like, I'm so good at BDK, I know all my stuff. But if you don't know exactly when and for how long you're going to get your maximum vengeance for a fight, you're going to lose out on a lot of damage, which I think that's the most interesting part that you should pay attention to as a BDK or any tank.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Learn the ins and outs.
Yeah, that just comes right back to the basics, just learning each encounter, understanding when damage is happening, how it's happening, all that stuff. All right. You guys have anything else there? Otherwise, we can do some viewer questions.
I think we're good on BDK.
Yeah, I think so. Again, one thing I could mention as well is that during Dancing Room Weapon, if you press Soul Reaper, and you get the double application of Soul Reaper, if the Dancing Room Weapon fades out, you don't actually get the damage from the second one.
Good to know.
Yeah. So in order to get 2 Soul Reapers out of your Dancing Room Weapon window, you have to have Soul Reaper be your very first global, and you need to use it off cooldown, not even waiting for like a single global.
So like a macro you would recommend for that? Just like a Dancing Rune Weapon cast Soul Reaper macro?
It doesn't need to be that, but as long as you don't fuck around having, blood runes on cooldown and stuff like that. And yeah.
All right. Okay. So we only had one preemptive viewer question. We did kind of already answer it, but if anybody in chat has any more questions you guys want to ask, now would be the time to start typing those, and we'll get to those in a second. So Excelsis asks, with having Rune Strike available to hit on CD, we saved in Kata due to DS Glyph, Crimson Scourge, Baseline, and Soul Reaper effectively adding more value buttons overall to press. Do we expect to need less haste as Blood Decay and MoP? We kind of already talked about that. Riani's take was that, yeah, a lot less haste. We're going to be leaning more into that parry, dodge, and potentially even just crit angle as well, depending on, how your prog's going when you get comfortable moving into that just pure crit mode. Anything else you wanted to add to that? I know we already kind of talked about that one, but since you asked it, I wanted to make sure we at least addressed it.
I don't think there's something to add. I think that haste might have more of an offensive application than you may think, but the Sims will, the almighty Sims will let us know.
We'll find out soon. Cry wanted to know, what meta gem should we use?
I think there's no way you don't go reverberating, right?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
strength and
that's the
crit
one.
damage. Yeah.
Yeah. The strength is whatever, nice for the parry, sure, but
It's really the crit
3%
damage.
crit damage, that's
Yeah.
just what?
Especially in a case where you're literally stacking crit, it's always good, but you're stacking crit either through parry or dodge, or you're just pure stacking crit. So yeah, just huge value there. Undead Bones wants to know tank tier list for MTOT for 10 man and 25 man. You want to start with this one, Cal?
Sure. So as a main tank, I personally believe that BDK is, like we said so many times now, is going to be the most versatile and always be placed in S tier as the main tank. I think as an off tank, you would probably want to focus more on either the raid healing from guard as an example, or externals from a prot warrior or paladin for the raid itself. As at least from MSV and what I've seen from Heart of Fear and Toes, you having two beefy, versatile, but for yourself tanks might not be more beneficial than having one that can add benefits to the raid than just to itself.
Yeah, I would agree with
So
that. The big difference too, I guess, we've sort of talked about it, but between like Prot War and Brewmaster, like Brewmaster does raid healing through the absorbs of the Ox statue. The Prot War brings another Rallying Cry, another Vigilance for the other tank, and Skull Banner for more damage for the whole raid. So that's kind of I view those as the two best off tanks for sure at the moment, and those are like you choose what is more important to your raid there, either that Prot War utility or that extra Brewmaster raid healing.
Yeah.
You agree with all that, Riani, or anything you wanted to throw in there?
No, I think you'll, if you go main tank Bloody K, or even maybe a tier below as Brewmaster main tank, and then you have either a Brewmaster, Prot Warrior, and then a tier below that, Prot Pal as an off tank. I think you're in a pretty good spot. The only tank I really wouldn't bring to a raid at all is Guardian, but that's speaking from like a mid maxi perspective, right? If you're just looking to clear things, you're just looking to play it at a more casual environment, doing like Guardian will be absolutely fine. I think it'll even be in an all right spot, better than people might think. But yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see, what else do we have? Think from Yent, I think we see tank tuning if rumored other class tuning is true. So there's been some whispers that there might be some buffs to like rogues and holy paladins and things like that. Yeah, what do you guys think? This version of Vengeance they gave us felt really, really crazy. I was very surprised we got this. I don't know. How are you guys feeling? Do you think this version of Vengeance makes it maybe even to launch, but like the entire expansion if it does make it to launch?
I don't know about the entire expansion. That would be kind of wild, not gonna lie. Even now we're topping the damage on every single fight. And it's just gonna get more and more out of hand. But tank tuning for other classes, I don't know. I know that I know Jordy submitted some suggestions for buffing protection paladins through their tier set as to not like mess with their tuning in later patches when they're actually going to be good.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and especially now with Celestials, the Celestial dungeons, it's actually a viable way to do tuning because that means that you're gonna be able to get tier bonuses much more easily. It does still lead to some pretty mm, feels bad moments at times when you're like locked into an LFR set, even though you have upgrades that are available to you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I could see that maybe being the case. Otherwise, I don't really see the need for tank tuning at all. I say that's a blood DK, of course, so take
do
that
you
with a grain of
think
salt.
there is any tuning that is necessary right now at all? So, as an example, I'm sure you've played BDK in Wrath. I was always told, as I didn't play Wrath before, coming to Classic, I was told it's a Prop Paladin or get out. Basically, I wanted to try a BDK on in the first phase. That's completely shut down. Old War, you're starting to see more BDKs, especially in Agalon, abusing the thing. I'm not going to mention it too much.
Nah.
And then it only really it all came alive in TOGC and especially in ICC for a BDK. But so would it not be a similar situation now where Prop Paladin is just lagging behind due to a certain stat that needs? Do you think it needs to be buffed?
Not at all.
I
Like
think it's
later
gonna
on,
be
for sure, they're going to be
crazy.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Later on, once it has a haste, I think it's gonna be just insane.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you know what like changes Jordy was proposing? Did he like have anything specific besides just like it would be part
Nah.
of the tier set? Okay.
Well,
I do
unless
have
you know
it
more than I do.
somewhere.
Do you have the specifics? Getting excited a little bit.
Actually, the only thing it was suggesting was adjusting like adding a haste value to their tier sets.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so it's like a generic idea of how to buffer or the lack of.
I feel like it's gotta be
Exactly.
something that makes you, turn away from that tier set once you get to throne. Because otherwise, like if the set's too good, like it could just be something you use, the entire expansion. So they definitely gotta be careful with that.
Yeah.
What would you guys think about if like the tier set they made just increased the duration of like the Shield of the Righteous buff? Because I feel like that's one of the big problems Prop Ally has right now, is that it just can't keep its active mitigation up very long. It has low uptime on it. So I'm kind of thinking about what if like that's what you targeted specifically, just you increase the tier set increases the duration of just that buff.
That is actually where they fall short. Though on damage, they're way behind as well, right? And which is where haste would come in for both of those. So I don't know. For me personally, it's hard to view it in any other way than just let it be, let it cook for a phase. They
Mm-hmm.
get the extra stats, and they're gonna start ramping up.
Sure.
They do actually have what you're describing though. So
What is it?
the only thing it does, they do have what you're describing. A set bonus that increases your uptime on Shield of the Righteousness. The only thing is it doesn't come from PvE.
Oh yeah, is it there? The PvP set does it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It doesn't directly increase the duration, but it does increase your holy power regeneration by like 30%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that? The holy power regeneration?
Wait, what do you mean by
Because
regeneration?
there is no regeneration for holy
Yeah,
power.
it's just generation. Yeah.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
from Sweden. Calm down, boys.
Wait, are you saying it's like a proc? I'm trying to pull it up right now. Is it just a proc that like gives you an extra holy power?
It's it's on taking damage. You get 1 holy power every I think it's 8 seconds, something like that.
Okay. And that effect works in PvE?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also, maybe we should save this for next episode, but I was doing some absolutely cursed cooking on Prot Pally with flash of light weaving.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
It does heal for
because
a crazy amount.
Well, sure, but it's
But yeah, what's the
also
other angle?
the holy PvP set gives you one holy power per flash of light. So
Mm,
every global you don't have a holy power generator, not regenerator,
yeah.
generator. Use the sun of flash of light.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I
that
mean, I
sounds
kind of
critical.
hope that's not a thing, but
Yeah.
we'll see. All right. Let's see. We had some other questions. We got pretty in the weeds. What trinket sets you gonna roll with pre-raid, and will you have a defensive set available?
You take this one first, Cal. I need to think it over.
Contrary to that, I don't have much thought about trinkets. I haven't found any that I really truly like. There is the I forget the name of it. The 450 item level one
Oh, the
that
Dragon
is
Link,
on use.
the engineering, or different one?
The other one, no, not
Oh,
so. The first trinket I would probably use for this year would be the Ghost Iron Dragon Link for sure, because you can get the 3 cogwheel gems in there, and that's another reason to take engineering. Is even if you don't have the headpiece, you still have 3 gems in there. 600 stats each, and then you have the little Dragon Link that's also chain lining
mhm.
mobs. But for a second trinket, at least the DMF ones that I've tried, I haven't found one that that I really enjoy playing with. Um, the tank trinket with the extra dodge does increase your. It's like a 8,000-ish dodge, right? With stamina passive from DMF.
Mhm.
That was more nice to stack crit through riposte than
Mhm.
it was for actual survivability, and I don't think the primary
Okay.
stats really benefit you much. So anything with stamina or strength is probably going to be a little less efficient than a secondary stat.
Okay.
And putting Synapse Springs on CD as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cursed, yeah. I am kind of torn on trinkets. I was testing a lot of different combinations during the Motion Vault weekend, but I'm kind of coming down on Dragonling being kind of like insta lock, and either stamina DMF, especially on fights where you have high vengeance. I think it's kind of nice. It is cursed that it puts your glove tinker on cooldown. And then also the carbine, something like that. The crit proc trinket that has strength on it. Also pretty good, but you have to be wary of kill times because it has a 2-minute ICD, so it can be, if it procs it at a bad time, it's really a wasted proc.
While we're mentioning the glove engineering enchant too, is there any possibility of using the dodge enchant for the extra crit versus the strength one? Do you think there's any breakpoint where possibly the dodge one becomes better, or you just always do the synapse, the strength?
Dodge one is pretty much always like assuming you have a decent amount of edges, that's always better.
Okay, so always going with the dodge one, pretty much.
I mean, that's where I'm coming down at the moment. At least it's not
Okay.
only that it gives dodge, aka crit, instead of strength, but it also gives way more stats.
Yeah, yeah. With the extra repose. Um,
No,
Yep.
I'm saying
or
like you get like 2,600 whatever dodge, but you only get 1,000 something
okay,
strength.
yeah, I got you. Question from Solomon: Can a Bloody K make a good OT if your guild main tank wants to main monk? I kind of think it's fine because they can have a unholy off spec, and unholy is one of the highest damage specs right now. I don't know. How are you guys feeling about that?
I think just find a new guild, yeah.
Find new guild.
Yeah.
It would be a shame to see a Bloody K not main tank, but it's definitely
Yeah.
doable and okay. As long as the other one is beneficial to the raid, from my perspective at least. The only really bad thing would be like a double BDK. But again, that is just perspective, right? Because you can do the content with any of them, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example that you're describing right now with well, you know, the brewmaster wanted to main tank and I'm on blood DK. Kind of like putting your feral druid on main tank position in Cataclysm, having your blood DK wail away without vengeance. But to be fair though, you don't really have that same dynamic in MoP. You're gonna be doing a lot of taunt weaving and shit like that. So the main tank and off tank role is less defined in 25 at least.
Yep. Minnie had a question too, just on sort of the same similar topic. Any one tank fights in MoP? So there's definitely already some. I'm sure there's gonna be more in 10-man. I haven't done 10-man as much, but I'm sure earlier you'll be doing more in 10-man than 25. But probably like at least half the fights, right? Once you've been doing it a few weeks.
Solo tank, I mean.
Solo tank, yeah.
Mogre, I'll just speak in Motion Vault because you know that's the only thing we've been able to test.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, but yeah, I mean at least on even on 25 man, you would solo tank dogs, you would solo tank Fang. You need 2 tanks for the shaman, Garajal, whatever it's called. You can solo tank Elegon if you want to. You'll solo tank Spirit Kings. You probably won't solo tank Will. Actually, does the stack go above 10?
Just caps at 10 because it's just reduced armor. Or are you talking
Yeah,
about the stack for the to get
nah, you're
the
right. The
attack?
armor. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, maybe there's a world where you solo tank Will as well at some
I've
point. You
heard some
just soak the
whispers.
stacks.
Yeah, I've heard some whispers
Sounds
Yeah,
like
that
a
I mean,
job for
that will
Subtle.
be a. Heard some
this sounds like a
whispers. There
job
might
for
be a strat.
Klothiani because if you reduce armor that you don't have,
It don't matter, man.
I solo tanked Blackhorn on Klothiani this tier, so I mean, why not Will?
Right. I mean, I feel like Brew would be even better for it too, right? Because you have so little armor, like baseline anyway. Like the plate tanks,
I
you're
guess so,
losing
yeah.
a lot, but yeah.
But bigger death strikes though.
Bigger death strikes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that is something we will see, like as the phase goes on for sure, though. And
Yeah.
kill times are getting
Yeah.
quicker and everything.
I would say on Fang, one important thing to keep in mind, it's not the your ability to solo tank, it's more of how good is your off tank at reversal.
Yeah.
So if you're nullifying and he's using reversal, that stacks to be he's probably doing a few good millions of damage points to the boss just through
Mhm.
reversal. And if they're good at taunting as well and not immuning the boss, that's even more damage just from vengeance. In our testing, at least, it proved to be better than solo tank for damage for the raid.
For sure.
Mhm.
For sure.
Dogs and Spirit Kings looks to be the cookie cutter solo, if you will, meta.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been talking about it a little bit, but not exactly directly. But yeah, the whole taunting for vengeance thing, like on pretty much any fight, you can guarantee you'll have at least like 50k vengeance at all times if you're just like not actively tanking, but just taunting, you know, to keep vengeance up. So, I mean, having like essentially a minimum of like 50k extra attack power, it kind of changes things. And then on the riposte tanks too, if you know you take a few swings when you're doing that taunt and you get your dodge or parry, then you get your crit buff up for 20 seconds as well. So even as an off tank, you still can get value, that crit value from dodge and parry, which is really nice. Keck wants to know what's the speed level angle for Blood DK with Warrior. They're capable of doing wild stuff solo 85 to 90. You've been playing around, or I mean, there's only so much you're going to want to say, right, Riani? If it's like an open world kind of thing, I'm sure. But is there anything you want to say about it?
The problem is with the open world stuff is I've already given everything away,
Oh,
so
okay.
every single spot is absolutely cooked.
Oh no.
I went to one of the spots like off stream just to check it out one day. It was midnight, and there were like 6 people grinding there
Oh god.
on the beta. I'm like, oh, what have I done? Yeah, he's leaked them all exactly. But solo dungeon wise, I think Prot Warrior is slightly better than Blood DK, but Blood DK can do it all as well. Like if you want a solo level in dungeons as a Blood DK, you're in a good spot, assuming you have some decent gear from Dragon Soul. Or if you level it as a second tune and you can send over some of the bind on account level 85 gear, which is like a huge item level as well.
Okay, nice. Cry is wanting to know is Tauntier still a thing? Thought that went away at some point. So like when they implemented it, it was basically a checkbox on each individual mob. By default, mobs didn't have Tauntier, and then they would go like specific mobs like Thorum, for example, in Ulduar. They would check the box like this can Tauntier. Have you guys experienced like Tauntier issues? I haven't really run into that yet.
No, not at all. I know on one of the cursed servers, the event or the threat is just so buggy that I had 7 taunts on one target in 1 minute. Of course, you know it didn't go immune there, but that could also be, you know, just a server being cooked type of thing.
So the DR counts 6 taunts over 20 seconds. That means you have 6 charges of taunt. If you taunt within a 20 seconds, it depletes 1 charge, and then becoming immune at the end of that 6. If you let it 20 seconds go by, then it becomes normal again. We've had that issue on Fang primarily because we don't really fight, so to speak, for Vengeance anywhere else. But with the min-maxing reversals and Vengeance for both tanks, if you're really trying to squeeze damage and have a fast skill with 2 tanks, that's the only fight. And I just have a, you know, WeakAuras with an icon, so we're prepared.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really run into it at any point, but we're all, I don't think we've been doing vengeance swapping and cheesing you know, as much as we should have.
Have you actually seen it go immune, Cal?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Fang the Accursed.
Fang specifically. Okay.
Yeah. So there's fights like Garajal where you can actually get the 50k Vengeance for free because he fixates the main tank, right? And I know we're not really getting into that, but so fights like that, the checkbox you mentioned is not ticked. So that boss does not go immune to taunt as far as we've tested. But you are able to refresh your Vengeance on your off tank for free without getting hit.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. I think let's see. So with all of the possible one tank for the best swapping between off tanking and DPSing for the off tank, which class would be ideal for both 10 and 25? So I feel like they all have good options. Like Prot Warrior has the arms option, which is great. Bring the skull banner, bring all that other utility, does great damage. The Unholy DK, great damage. Can bring an extra mass grip too if you need that. Let's see. The Windwalker, when played well, actually kind of insane. So the Brute can swap to that. Probably Rip Pally would be the worst, I think, of all the swaps you can make. Maybe Feral.
Well, we'll see.
I would say Feral is a
Yeah,
little
with the
better than Ret,
changes.
but yeah, we've
Yeah.
tried that. Yeah, I'd say from my perspective, again, it's Warrior, just because the baseline, you know, you have the Demo banner, the Rallying Cry, the Skull banner, and the Vigi. Whereas Brew, if you turn it into a Windwalker, unless you're Durenter, pretty much, I think he's the only one who does well no matter what the situation is. Our Spirit Kings was never really great for the Windwalker, but Dogs was really good. You have a 4-target cleave.
Okay. Yeah, we had Saren playing Windwalker, and I looked a bunch of times and saw him number 1 on the meter, but I know he's got tons of private server experience too, so
Yeah,
I don't
once
think
again, you
that's
have to be an
something like,
expert.
yeah, I don't think it's something like everybody could replicate for sure. Yeah, so arms wear, I guess, top choice, but I guess one thing to consider too is if it's an off tank, they probably more specialize in like the tanking part, so their skill level as the DPS may be a bit lower, potentially, depending on, you know, how much effort they put into like really learning that part of it. But yeah, the arms wear just baseline gonna bring a lot of stuff, just with the skull banner and rallying cry, vigilance, all that.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all the questions we got. So we're gonna start Prot War next, but we're gonna take a few minute break because we were going for quite a while there. And in the DK talk, we did cover some general stuff too. So I think the Prot War side will be a bit shorter. But let's take a few minute break, give everybody a chance to get up and stretch, and then we'll hop into the Prot Warrior stuff. See you guys in a minute.
That was good.
Yes, break 5 pyro, exactly.
Oh, I did send you the trinket, the one we were talking
Okay.
about
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
Delos with the 700 hit.
Oh, wait, did we lose cow? Hmm. Yeah, everything's messed up now. We lost cow. Yeah, once he gets back in here, it should be fixed. Or wait, oh, there he is. Wait.
That was odd. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
not sure what happened.
yeah, there you are. No worries, no worries.
Yeah, just drop the bomb and leave. Oops.
Yeah. Like, there's a
So I'm not sure
trinket.
if
I'm out
I
of
cut
here.
off or not.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did. You just started talking about it when you pieced out.
Yeah, so
I
it's
got
like
pulled up now though.
it's kind of like an offensive, but it's a BOE. So you'd have to buy it, but it could be just a fraction of the price of like a DMF trinket. It's just that you can control it, and it's not on a 2-minute ICD. It's slightly shorter.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have its potential.
Yeah, that is a lot of strength.
Yeah. And then the hit is also
And yeah,
something
the
you just don't
hit.
need to reforge into.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
have to
big
worry about
value.
it. Yeah.
It just turns into whatever you want, parry, crit, whatever. Okay. Yeah, good one to look at. The BOE part too, just so nice. Good.
Yeah.
You don't gotta worry
Somebody's gonna
about
kill
any
it for you.
drops or anything.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Welcome back, Riani. What do you got
Yo.
there? You got a scone or what is that?
We got some banana bread,
Oh,
courtesy of the wife.
okay. Hell yeah. Love that. All right. So let's jump into the Prot Warrior. Riani also the Prot Warrior Wowhead Rider. So we're just blessed today. We got the Wowhead Rider for both the Blood DK and the Prot Warrior.
True.
So
Both my personalities are represented here.
what's your overall assessment of the Prot Warrior, Riani? What do you how good do you think it is in raids, challenge modes? What's it good at? What's it bad at?
I think the Prot Warrior is interesting because I think a lot of people will play it and they will think that it's not really that strong. But then they start to get a little bit better at it, and then they realize, wait a minute, this class is actually pretty damn good. It brings strong damage on its own. It's good. I wouldn't say as good as Blood DK, but it's good. But then it has this invisible damage that is not attributed to you, but is directly responsible for something that you brought, and that is, of course, Skull Banner. So it is like good on its own, but then it brings all these additional utility with vigilance, with Skull Banner, with Demo Banner, with Rallying Cry. It's in a pretty good spot. Pretty good spot, I would say. Challenge modes, they're fine. I did all gold on it this week. But I did not have as good of a time on the Prot Warrior as I did with the Blood DK for sure.
Yeah, I've been playing quite a bit of Prot Warrior. I think that's what I'm going to be playing week 1. I might be playing both Prot Warrior and Brew, amongst the splits, because it looks like MSV is going to be a separate raid release. So it'll basically all just be about trying to min-max as much gear across your actual 25 man you're taking into like heart and toes. So yeah, that's gonna change some things a bit, but yeah, I've been loving the Prot Warrior. And one thing that I think I saw you mentioned it in your Wowhead guide too, the whole shield block versus shield barrier thing. Like, it really feels like the game is pushing you towards, like, if you're taking physical damage, you always shield block. If you're taking magic damage, you always, like, shield barrier. But there's a lot of cases, like, shield barrier is just the right choice over shield block. And, like, if you play Brewmaster too, you know how insane guard is. And shield barrier is just like a guard you can use more often. It's just absolutely busted. You'll frequently see like 300k absorbs off a single shield barrier press. And I mean, at this point in the game, you know, you probably have like 450 to 500k HP somewhere in there, and so like that's an insane percentage of your total health, and that's just a thing on a 1.5 second cooldown that you can just use anytime you have rage. Takes up to 60 rage, but can be cast at 20. So that's a nice little added benefit too, is that even if you don't quite have that 60 rage, you're still gonna get, you know, a lot of value, and it can prevent a death.
Yeah, that's a bigger benefit than people may think with shield barrier as well. It's that people usually think of like, oh, but I'm getting smoother damage intake with shield block, right? Because you know it has a constant. The cost is like 6 seconds, but in actuality, you just get to press shield barrier so much more often, because of the reduced rage that you need to actually press it. And it does have it doesn't have a GCD either, so you just continuously press it without having to worry about putting other spells on cooldown.
Yeah, yeah, definitely one of my favorite changes. Cow, have you played much Prot War on beta?
I have, just not in raid, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But my good friend, like I said, he played brute and warrior, so I live vicariously through him and his
Yeah,
logs. You know, I'm just reenacting them. Yeah, I'd see
sure.
what he does, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna press this here and press this there. I think it's a very, very solid tank. The amount of externals that you get as a warrior is actually, it's astounding, because I'll ask a DPS warrior for a triple at this point, and what that means is I want vigilance, demo banner, which is 10% DR for everybody for 15 seconds if it's around the mobs around a banner. And vigilance. So sorry, rallying cry as well, which is now 20% HP.
Yeah,
So having
that's a nice little
that kind of
stack.
versatility, yeah, 20% vigilance
The
lasting for
triple.
so long as well with a big DR. It's just
Yeah,
something you
vigilance is
it's
so
like the
busted.
reminds me of the prop paladin off tank in Wrath
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how much you can help benefit the raid from your externals.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just been loving Prot War though. It feels so good, and people are kind of in disbelief just from the last couple expansions, you know, of like where Prot War was. Nobody wants to believe like Prot War is actually good now, and it just is. Um, it has so many buttons though. That's like the big thing. If you played like a retail Prot War, you know like how many like little cooldowns and stuff it has,
Yeah.
and it feels a lot more like that. And then shield barrier obviously being pretty similar to ignored pain, that comes later. So if you like the retail version of Prot War, this version of Prot War is definitely like the big step toward that retail Prot War, which is one of my favorite tanks of all time, definitely. So I'm a huge fan of that. And it just feels
Yeah,
awesome to always, you know, have stuff to press, whether it's an offensive cooldown or a defensive cooldown, and having that safety net of like a shield barrier to prevent a death like anytime you need it, pretty much.
yeah. Um, One thing I will say that Prot Warrior does not have going for it is that it pretty much has zero self-sustain. There is not a lot of things you can do to regen your health bar, whereas literally every single other tank has something that they can do. And that does definitely feel bad in a 10-man environment. 25-man, I honestly don't think it matters that much. But in a 10-man environment, kind of rough, kind of rough.
Yeah. There are those niche situations though, when you can second wind and spam shield barrier and just be immortal. Not really a raid thing, but it is a fun thing to mess around with in like dungeons and challenge mode, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So
if you don't take more than 3% of your health per second, then you're immortal.
yeah,
And
unlike the other tanks, you're right though. It's sometimes you just have to have the healer understand that you're now a proud warrior and not a blood death knight. Just,
yeah,
throw
Yeah,
me some love here and there.
it's definitely an adjustment for sure. So Notable changes coming from Kata. I'll throw a few out there to start with. So shield block, that's a big one. It's now a short cooldown. It gives you guaranteed chance to block for its duration. So if you don't dodge, parry, or miss on the attack, it will just be a block. So that's pretty great. The worst outcome of an attack is you block it. It lasts, I think, 6 seconds. You can have 2 charges at once, though. And you can't have 100% uptime on it, but you can have close, and you always have that shield barrier too. But as we talked about, you don't exactly want to always shield block anyway. But some of the other big changes, like in defensive stance, you aren't actually going to get rage now from attacking things. You're going to generate your rage by using your abilities. So like Shield Slam doesn't cost rage, it generates rage. Devastate just doesn't cost rage. And then Revenge generates rage, doesn't cost rage. And then every time you get a critical block, you're going to proc in rage, which gives you 10% damage buff that you're used to, but it also gives you 10 rage. So this is one of those things where the more things are attacking you, just the more rage you get, kind of deal. So that's always a valuable thing to be thinking about. And part of shield block's value is the fact that, you know, it's going to increase your chance to get those crit blocks to then get rage refunded. So you may refund the entire, you know, cost of the shield block, depending on how many things are attacking you. And it could even generate rage if you have enough things attacking you, like overall. And then I mentioned...
I don't think so, because it does have a ICD.
Oh, is there an ICD? I wasn't actually aware of that. Is it 1 second or?
I want to say 1.5. I have it somewhere in the guide though, so I can see if I can find it.
Yeah, good call on that. At least on the Wowhead spell, I'm not seeing any GCD or any cooldown, but that doesn't always mean something.
Yeah. Where do I have it? I think it's in Stat Priority. There's a hidden internal 3-second cooldown on a rage.
Oh, 3 second, really? Okay.
Yeah. That does put a damper on things when you AoE.
Wait, is that? Because I feel like when I'm tanking 1 million mobs in dungeons, I just have 1 million rage. Am I sleeping on something? Is there like some other thing that would be causing that?
I don't think so. I'll accept that you just get infinite revenge procs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I'll go out and pull a bunch of mobs and just verify that it's 3 seconds. But
okay. Yeah, we'll get back to that. Yeah, I mean, Prot War just feels amazing though. Like the toolkit's always been pretty awesome since maybe Wrath, and it's just gotten better since then. And finally, it's a version of Prot War that survives well and does good damage. So having that, you know, awesome baseline toolkit already, just it lets it shine more that, you know, you're bringing the other aspects of tanking also. So I've just been having a great time on it. What about you, Riani? Any like big changes that you'd want to mention that stand out?
Yeah, I mean the main thing is definitely the active mitigation, right? And that you have basically no abilities cost rage. The only abilities that cost rage are your active mitigation spell and your heroic strike, cleave, and execute. Your your offensive trade spells, so to speak. One thing to mention is that you don't have restrictions based on what stance you're in, so you can use execute freely now. For example, how like you couldn't in Kata without stance dancing. Rend is gone, so you just get insta deep wounds through what's it called? Thunderclap, and Revenge. Not Revenge, Devastate. The biggest change of all, praise the Lord. Last Stand and Rallying Cry no longer shares a cooldown.
I don't know why they ever like implemented that in the first place. It feels so bad.
I can't believe we made it through the entirety of Cataclysm without them changing that.
I thought for sure that would change, yeah. With how down bad
I was
Prot War
so
was.
sure that the buffs were gonna come any minute now.
They just gave up on us for Sod. They didn't do like any changes in Kata. It seems like they're more hands-on for MoP though now.
Definitely. Yep. But other than that, there's nothing really too sweeping. Of course, you don't have demo shout in the same way like you did in previous expansions. Now we just get automatically reapplied. Your weakening blows gets applied through Thunderclap, and then demo shout gets turned into a defensive cooldown, like a small 1 minute 10% defensive cooldown, which you can also use as a kind of an offensive cooldown if you have Glyph of Insight as well.
20% even. Demo banner,
Yeah.
10% though.
Oh yeah, 20%. That's right.
Yeah, I love this version of demo shout though. It's so much more interesting than just, having to spend a global cooldown on applying an attack power debuff that other tanks get, applied for free just through their rotation, like Blood DK and Prop I did in the past. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. And should mention too that the attack speed debuff just doesn't exist anymore. There's just that 10% reduced physical damage debuff. That's the only one. Weakened blows, all tanks are gonna bring that. And
all non-tanks too.
If
you have a Arms Warrior pressing,
they're applying it too. Okay.
Yeah.
It feels great though. This is a much better version, I think, because that was always a downside. Prot War was the extra GCDs just to do what other people did for free.
Yeah, it did.
Cow, any changes you'd want to mention?
You guys went over most of them. I think the biggest thing to consider is that we do get the fork in a road. Do I defensive or do I offensive spend rage? Obviously, the spender became the generator and such, so it's reversed. But there's a bunch of button bloat as well that you kind of have to go through. It's time for Swifty one-shot macros now.
Yeah.
And yeah, you guys went through most of it. We've already talked about the external so much.
Yeah, on the topic of like choosing the offensive or defensive too, that's gonna be the most impactful in execute range. Like execute is so hard, and so you're gonna be like really making a decision there. Like, do I execute for like 700k damage, or do I shield barrier or shield block? You gotta ride that line between surviving and doing the most damage. But the executes are very
so
fun.
many buttons to survive that you can actually you can make educated decisions since you are not a tank in control of your own. The externals you give to the raid are also for yourself, or a defensive like Demo Shout, having Rallying Cry. On top of Last Stand, if you even wanted it, there is a lot of options to do very cool things. And my tank in my raid has already showed me an Elegon where he gets over 2 million executes back to back to back.
Nice.
It just
we love
completely
that.
carrying the last bit of the fight.
Yeah, I think on like a non-damage imp like Elegon situation, I think the highest I saw was like 700k, but like still pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, when we talk about MSV, we can go over why that happens on Elegon, but it's pretty sweet to see how much damage Warrior can do without even being the quote-unquote main tank. It just doesn't matter because you just get the Vengeance and you go ham.
Yep, absolutely. So stat priority, probably pretty similar to Blood DK, but what are we looking at for stat priority here, Riani?
For our stat priority, we're actually looking very similar to BDK, both in our gearing, but also how we think about gearing. What where on the spectrum of defensive versus offensive we lie. We've something we've talked about all of Cataclysm, but it follows up very much the same rhythm in Spandaria. If anything, kind of comes amplified. You want to think about more where you lie on the spectrum if you're playing in Spandaria. I have 4 different stat priorities on the Wowhead page, where I would recommend most people go for the balanced approach, where you prioritize hit cap, then you prioritize, I would say, hard expertise cap with warrior, especially because of how your misses, dodges and parries causes you to not generate rage when your shield slam or revenge gets dodged or parried. And then of course, parry, dodge. And I put crits actually quite high on the Prot Warrior, especially because it's not only your critical blocks that give you enrage, but it's also your critical strikes with Devastate and Shield Wall, I think, as well. Gives you enrage as well. So that is,
Shield
of course,
slam.
a offensive gain as well, too, or offensive but also small defensive gain with crits. Then of course you can go full beef defensive mode, where you want to prioritize things like stamina, where mastery becomes insane if you actually press shield block. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend going down that route.
Yeah, part of the parry and dodge value too, parry in particular for Prot War, when you parry or dodge an attack, you reset your revenge cooldown. We already sort of alluded to that. And then you also have a glyph where you do 50% more damage on revenge after you parry an attack. So if you reset on a parry, you're not only resetting revenge, but it's also going to do 50% more damage. So
Yeah.
that amplifies the value even more past, just you get 75% that parry rating as crit and everything. So I've definitely been enjoying the parry stack after like hit and expertise hard cap on my Prot War.
Agreed.
Cow, anything you want to add there as far as Prot War
I
sets?
agree with that.
Okay.
I think the Hold the Line change was pretty cool because it used to be like a little buff you get for yourself in Cataclysm. That's a change we didn't really talk about yet. But yeah, you're amping yourself, and so parry becomes even more efficient stat. Probably the most efficient for warrior for all purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So rotation, we can kind of segue into that. So my understanding of the rotation right now is basically on single target, you're going to prioritize shield slam, then revenge, then devastate between those. And then if you proc a refresh on your shield slam through sword on board by devastating, then you're going to shield slam again. And then, you just kind of shield slam, revenge, devastate. And then for AoE, you would just move revenge and shield slam in that. Is there anything beyond that or anything to correct on that, Riani?
I don't think so. Like, you're just a shield slam or revenge,
Yeah.
simp for sure. That's your biggest priority. And then, it becomes a case of like, yeah, you can make offensive trades. Like you can swap out your active mitigation for heroic strike or cleave. And then of course, using all your procs, ultimatum and glyph of insight didn't mention that either. But yeah, it's pretty simple. Shield block, revenge, or no, shield slam, revenge, and then you active mitigation, and then you just fill in between those two spells.
Mm-hmm. And then you also have the glyph, heavy repercussions. When you have shield block active, your shield slam does 50% more damage. So, are there ever times you are holding shield slam to benefit from that if you don't, quite have the rage yet to shield block, or are you kind of just ignoring that and just gaining the value there as you can?
Yeah, I'm usually ignoring that. To be honest, I honestly don't use shield block that much, so
Mostly shield berry. Yeah.
yeah.
That was what I found to be like the thing that helped me the most was I was shield blocking too much when I first started playing Prot War, and just learning to use shield barrier a lot more as I did the raids more.
Yeah, shield blocking is something you do as a like offensive middle ground to proc more enrages and to well, I guess to proc more enrages, but also to proc your heavy repercussions glyph as well to be able to use that. But if you just want to be the beefiest tank you can be, then shield barrier is pretty much always going to be the best option.
Yeah, especially after the vengeance changes. Like shield barrier was a bit lackluster at first, just because vengeance wasn't really working correctly. So it did kind of create some bad habits. I know, at least for me, where I was like overvaluing shield block because I was just used to like when I press shield barrier, it gives me like nothing. But after the vengeance changed, I mean, I feel like the most common number I see from a shield barrier is like 270 to 300k absorb. So it's very, very good, being more than half your total HP.
And that's with at least every every other ability being covered by the CTC table. So
yeah. Cow, anything you're doing special with your rotation?
Well, we haven't really talked about the 1 minute talents yet, so we will, I'm sure. But other than that, it's just the execute phase. Being able to stack your vengeance when you're going to execute, communicating with the other tank, so you can do maximum output and not just waste the executes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's move on to the talents then. I got some pretty interesting ones. So in the first tier, we've got Juggernaut Double Time Warbringer. Feel like Double Time is just kind of the always take, but do you guys think there's a use case for the others?
Juggernaut is good on in dungeons. Just getting more rage, more gap closures in general. I think Double Time is the general always like go-to pick because like in a raiding environment where you just having the flexibility of being able to charge twice is always going to be better than just having a lower cooldown on charge in general. So I agree. Double Time is generally the go-to.
Okay. And then the second tier, we've got Enraged Regeneration, 10% heal, and then 10% hot, doubled if you're enraged, bringing it to 20 and 20. Second Wind, this one situationally is just completely insane, but for raiding, it's not, you're not really going to get that insane value. But basically, when you're below 35% health, you regenerate 3% health per second. So this is going to be incredibly valuable for like soloing old raids and while you're leveling, stuff like that. But I don't know of a specific use case for it. Possibly there's some like niche use for it, but not that I know of.
Like if If impending victory was not on the GCD, that would be so nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's just having a 1.5 second GCD and then also it costing rage is like,
Yeah. Even if it's just 10, like the fact that it costs rage, one of the few things that actually, costs rage,
yeah.
feels bad.
Yeah.
The one time I do like it is Will of the Emperor, where like every time you're tanking, you have it guaranteed as like a backup heal. Especially as we talked about as a tank that doesn't really have self healing. To guarantee that you at least have this each tank phase.
I think you have enraged region every tank phase too, don't you?
Every minute, no, I don't believe so, because
It doesn't
it's
really line up that
yeah,
way.
it's 20 seconds, I believe, of tank phase, and then dance. I forget exactly how long the dance is. But I think it's just slightly off. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I haven't been playing Warrior too much on that fight.
But enraged regeneration, I feel like is kind of the go-to. It's gonna give you the most healing, 1 minute cooldown, and paying victory like we talked about. It has that rage cost, it has that GCD cost, but potentially some fights you may want to use it on. But overall, I think enraged regen is the go-to.
Yeah. You can combine it with Berserker Rage as well. Make sure you're guaranteed enraged as well.
No, yeah. And then the next tier, not super interesting for rating, but you have like staggering shout. So enemies within 20 yards that are snared become rooted for 5 seconds. I don't know of
So
a
trash.
yeah, I don't know of a time that could be used, but possibly there could be something throughout the expansion. Piercing Howl is just the Piercing Howl you're used to. AoE slow, and then Disrupting Shout. This is, I think, the most exciting one on the tier for sure.
For sure.
Just basically a AoE pummel, which is pretty sick. 40-second cooldown AoE pummel. You can interrupt multiple things at once. So this is what I've been using as my go-to. You guys been doing anything differently there?
No,
Not
ran
I
this
know.
in the
Yeah.
challenge modes the other day, and it was so goddamn nice.
Yeah, no, it's insane.
Yeah.
So this one gets a little more interesting this tier where we've got Bladestorm, Shockwave, and Dragon Roar. So what are you liking on here, Ronnie? And would you change that for different types of fights?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think Dragon Roar is the general go-to. Especially on more like single target oriented fights. But people have been sleeping on Bladestorm. For sure. In on like not Spirit Kings, the Stone Guards, for example, Bladestorm is just doing really good damage, especially when combined with Bloodbath in the last Talon row. If you want to trade some defensive utility, you can also swap to a two-hander for even bigger Bladestorms. There are some ways to cheese your GCD, so you don't have to worry about the GCD of swapping weapons and stuff like that. Yeah, I like Bladestorm. Like you do really insane damage when you have a lot of targets up, and it does have some niche use cases. But generally, Dragon's Roar, situationally, Bladestorm, challenge modes, Shockwave.
Yep, totally agree. Cow, any other thoughts on that?
Oh, we briefly touched on the Swifty one-shot macro. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to Bladestorm and you're not prepared, you kind of want to be, even with like a pre-defensive into the macro, because that can sometimes hurt. Bladestorming and Raid at least have seen
Mm-hmm.
that. So Dragon
Yeah.
Roar is the general go-to, like Randy said. But I think Bladestorm, it's gonna be crazy. If you're actually trying to kill the ads, whatever ads there might be, it'll
Mm-hmm.
be more useful than Dragon Roar.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that the top end damage of that end rate is quite insane for AoE. Blade Storm.
I agree. Especially because Dragon Roar as well doesn't get affected by Bloodbath, which is kind of a bummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell us, Rennie, have you been doing the sorry to cut you off, the two-handed Blade Storm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been doing it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, that looks
quite
pretty
nice.
fun. I haven't tried that yet.
Yeah.
One other thing with Dragon Roar 2, you do get the 0.5-second knockdown, so that's potentially important if you're fighting some things that have interruptible cast by, you know, knocking them down. So another thing to keep in mind there. The next tier, we've got Mass Spell Reflect, Safeguard, and Vigilance. So for raids, Vigilance is typically going to be the one you're going for. CMs, Mass Spell Reflect can be pretty insane. You finding any use for Safeguard? I feel like it's just kind of hard to use in general.
Safeguard is theoretically like one of the best defenses in the game. You know, it has, what is it, 20% uptime? No, is it more? No, it's yes, 20% uptime.
20%, yeah, 30-second cooldown, 6-second duration.
Yeah, and you know, if you can, then you can cover the rest of that time with other externals. You can just have externals up at all times. However, it's not very practical to use. You can often not displace yourself in a way to make it good, and so you'd much rather have the 12 seconds of 30% instead of 20% damage reduction. But you know, there could be specific scenarios where you would prefer a safeguard, but I think realistically you will never swap out of vigilance.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's a little awkward with it too is like you are giving them that 20% DR, but you're also intercepting the next like attack against them. So they aren't even getting the full 6 seconds of like that 20% DR realistically, because you're taking one of the attacks anyway, which you just do baseline with intervene. So when you look at the 6 seconds, not really 6 seconds, most likely.
Yeah.
But yeah, Vigilance just completely insane. 2-minute cooldown, 30% damage reduction, 12-second duration. And this is something all your arms warriors are going to have too. So as a tank in MoP, this is just one of the things to get used to is this is an insane external that you'll be calling for a lot. And yeah, when you see arms warriors in your raid, you just kind of get excited as a tank because they're going to increase your crit damage with their banners. They're going to they've got the demo banner for you to reduce damage taken. They've got the vigilance for you to reduce your personal damage taken. And yeah, we love arms warriors as tanks for sure.
Except for when they steal our loot, of course.
Except for when they steal our loot. But we're gonna be looking at
good
that.
Thing we don't want mastery at least.
Yeah, we're gonna be looking at that parry dodge loot a lot of the time though, right? So
I mean, for the first week, yeah, but after that, you know,
after that,
big smirk
just
there,
pure, just pure crit.
Yeah.
I need my Blade Storm two-hander. Come on.
Yeah. And then this final tier. So we got Avatar. I mean, anybody who looks at this probably thinks, you know, 20% damage for 24 seconds. That looks pretty awesome. And then Bloodbath, 1-minute cooldown, applies bleeds on your special attacks. And then Stormbolt does a bunch of damage to things that are immune to stuns, 30-second cooldown. So Bloodbath is kind of the go-to here. But how are you feeling on like Avatar also?
Nah. Avatar is kind of trash. Like, if you really want the damage for a specific window and your damage doesn't matter outside of that, yeah, sure. But very, very situational. I am, however, interested to play around more with Stormbolt. Because when you read the tooltip, you know, it just has 125% or 500% weapon damage but it doesn't say anything about a one-hander or a two-hander.
Yeah.
And two-hand weaving with Stormbolt just literally doubles the damage that it does. So you can get some pretty fat Stormbolts out, and I am interested in playing around with that in a single target environment for sure.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to take a look at. I do like this whole two-hander swap angle for the Blade Storm and the Stormbolt. Definitely sounds
Just
fun.
put his shield back on, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the shield?
When do we get the Titan's Grip Prot War two-hander and shield?
Exactly.
All right.
I would say Avatar has its
Mhm.
very, very niche case use for it, we mentioned. So I haven't tested, obviously, but what do you think about fights like Elegon, where killing ads is nearly never, let's call it, important? Let's say you're the part warrior off tank in a raid, and now you're looking at all of the ads are coming back from the phase with you, and you're not actually killing them. You're bleeding them with your dot, and you're getting aggro on all of them, and now you have 300,000 attack power. And then you can use Avatar specifically to kill the boss instead of Bloodbath to kill everything at once.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really good for circumstances like that.
Yeah, but that's very, very situational. So the go-to, you don't want to think about it, Bloodbath plus macro it into your stuff. Once you have Vengeance, just down.
Swifty macro.
Swifty macro. Back in the day, we called it like the Vive macro too. I don't know if you guys remember that. He was like a arena warrior. And I mean, you get so many off GCD things. It's just a macro that, uses like 8 damage increase things at once. And I remember on my arms where like you had Colossus Smash in there too. It was like Colossus Smash, like all your damage stuff, and you just deleted people. All right, so
Good old days.
yeah, this I mean, I feel like probably has less talent variation than most other classes and specs. Like this build we have on here, I feel like you're gonna use it basically all the time, other than the potential niche situations we talked about. So we're gonna talk glyphs now.
I feel like glyphs for warriors are so awkward because there's so many good ones. But you just end up insta-locking like 3 of them all the time.
Yeah.
So sad.
So
we should each say one and see if we're synchronized on that thought.
All right, let's do it.
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start with the obvious. The obvious one is hold the line.
Great choice. Great choice.
All right, and I'll go Glyph of Insight.
Glyph of Insight. All right.
Yep.
That's a great one. I mean, typically Glyph of Heavy Repercussions for that extra shield slam damage, one of your main abilities, There is, for Will of the Emperor, the potential to use Glyph of Enraged Speed as well. 20% more movement speed. If you're having any trouble with the dance, this just gives you, more leeway. And you should be most of the time enraged. And you can, pop like Berserker Rage if you need to. Actually, does that count? I don't know. I think it does. Yeah, for the 20%.
It does give you the enrage buff, so yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, those I don't know how we feel about that. Those are the 3.
One?
Okay.
I like death from above a lot.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. I haven't actually played around with that one yet.
If you're thinking about your uptime on shield block throughout every fight and you start analyzing your logs or your friends, you might notice that the higher damage you're going for, potentially the less you go for that glyph. And you can really add, it's like a dual purpose death from above, right? Because it reduces the cooldown on your best mobility action in the game pretty much. You're just flying somewhere at a high speed.
Yep.
And it also does a lot of damage on impact.
Yeah.
So you could use that offensively. GCD. Yeah, exactly. So you could think about that as like, how much damage would I actually receive or gain, from heavy repercussions throughout a fight that I'm kind of maybe forced to use shield block where I don't want to, potentially, for a 50% shield slab increase.
Yeah, like next time you do stone guards, for example, I'm not sure if you're doing it already, but weave in some heroic leaps into that fight. You're gonna be
Okay.
seeing a noticeable increase.
Big damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of damage are we looking at on this?
I haven't been able to get some good logs myself because I've only been doing 10 man with bugged vengeance and some Puso strats. But I mean I'm sure Subtle has some logs, or not Subtle, Cow has some logs with a Prot where you're doing that. Could probably
Yeah,
tell you
I'll have to
better.
dive because he didn't really use it on the last one. We've been doing a lot of
Mm.
1 and or 2 tanks, so we kind of go in and out. But yeah, here's a pro tip, real quick, and it's something people usually glance over. If you vigilance your other tank, it actually makes your taunt have no CD.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what that means? You have these cheeky little naughty double taunt on a couple of dogs, especially if you have a BDK off tank, or a tank, so you can also double taunt back if you wanted to. You stack your vengeance, and then you really get a really large heroic leap on all 4.
Okay. Yeah. Big
Just
tip.
keep it on a hush hush so my warrior doesn't do it to me.
Of course, we would never tell anyone.
Yeah, nobody's listening right now. This is
No.
just between us.
Of course. Wait, have you? I mean, I'm not live. Are you
Yeah,
guys live?
no, not
Okay,
at all.
that's good.
That's just the 3
That's
of us.
good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Glyph of Unending Rage. I haven't really found any time I'm really capping on Rage, so I haven't found use for this, but have you guys run into that?
No.
Not personally,
You
no.
like you can use it for like I'm currently about to take over Garajal and I want to stack up 120 rage so I can shield block and shield barrier right after, whatever, but nah, so useless.
I think it's again,
Yep.
it falls into the trap of shield blocking a little too much. And so when you
Mhm.
stop doing that, then it frees up a lot of rage.
Yeah.
A lot of real estate to do other things.
Yep, definitely. And we mentioned Glyph of Insight, but we should just go over it really quick. So when you use Demo Shout, it makes your next 3 Heroic Striker Cleaves free. And we also talked about Ultimatum before, which is when you Shield Slam crit, you get a free cleave or Heroic Strike, and it's a guaranteed crit. So between the 2 of these, you actually get a ton of free Heroic Strikes and cleaves. So this is a really important thing to pay attention to. So just make sure you have like something on your UI that's kind of letting you know you have those free procs to use, because those will be pretty frequent and important to use.
Yeah, agreed.
Any other glyphs you guys want to go over for the majors?
No, like there are some situational ones, but it's more like, yeah, like gag order, kind of cool. Dungeon.
One we've seen on Spirit Kings would be Disrupting Shout. If you're main tanking and you're stacking Vengeance, that could be pretty neat. With our Root Interruption.
Oh, Root Interruption? Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah.
So you have so there is a downside to it, but
mhm.
if they let you, you could be the main kicker once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 6% damage. Yeah, so anytime.
Yeah, I call it a Disrupting Shout because we use it a lot in dungeons, but you get what I mean is you can either pummel or Disrupting Shout.
Does it work with disrupting? It specifically says pummel on the glyph, but Blizzard tooltips.
I'll try it.
You never
again,
know.
But I just remember that from the Grim Batol days.
Okay.
Good old Grim Batol.
Oh man, R.I.P.
Yeah, justified.
All right, so now minor glyphs we're gonna take a look at. Anything here that you've found useful?
I mean, there's 2, of course, that stand out. Intimidating Shout. It's your insta lock-in the only one that actually brings any utility here.
Yep. Targets no longer flee in fear; they just stand still. If you played retail, it's a very, very nice one to have.
Yeah. And then the second one that's mandatory, of course, is the Glyph of Blazing
Trail.
Blazing Trail.
Yeah, absolutely. Leaves a trail of fire in your wake. If you're going to charge, why not do it with some style?
Exactly.
I mean, this is an auto include in my mind. Like, obviously, you need fire on the ground when you charge things.
For sure. Honorable shout out as well to the Thunderclap glyph as well.
Yes, the lightning strike. Is that the one? Yeah. Yeah, there's some very, very good ones in here. Also, battle shout and commanding shout terrify small animals. Glyph of blood curdling shout. Yeah. Prot War like really has some good ones here.
For sure.
Execute critical strike summons a flock of carrion birds. That pairs very well with hunters and their crow thing they do. So you can just swarm things with tons of birds, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, miners are, you know, they're these ones it's just whatever you want there. So moving on to professions, I mean, we pretty much already covered it with the Blood DK, but engineering and blacksmithing, I think we're probably still in agreement that's the play.
Yeah, indeed. That is the one thing that is really nice about doing both the Blood DK and the Prot Warrior section on Wowhead is that there's so much copy paste.
Yeah, it's a lot of carryover.
Not because just like one is lazy or you know I'm lazy on the other guy. It's just like it's literally the same for so much of your you know the things that you're going for on Blood DK and on Prot Warrior. But yeah, nothing changes in the profession section for sure.
All right, and I don't think we mentioned it last time, but if you really want to focus on challenge modes, you could go leatherworking instead of the blacksmithing for the drums of speed. But that's kind of a little bit more niche if like that's you know your main focus.
Yeah, it's also just like what is it like 15% or something. I mean,
yeah, it's really for people who are you know competing for top times in the world.
Indeed.
Will we see any Prot Warriors doing top times?
Oh, it's a good question. On P server, it's all about the Brewmaster, but they also, you know, have a different version of healing spheres there, where they spawn closer together and they heal for 50% more, or I guess 100% more. We have a 50% reduction here, so I don't know. It's possible. Could happen. No, it's not possible at all.
Maybe.
Oh man. Do you want to put a bounty out there, Riani? Like you'll give somebody like $100 if they can get a top time on a Prot War?
Oh, dude, how the hell do you think I could afford that? Oh man,
10 years worth of streaming revenue.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so let's look at, I mean, tips and tricks now, I guess. You guys, we talked about that death from above glyph with the heroic leap actually being a good damage source that a lot of people wouldn't think about, but the two-hander swap for like Blade Storm and possibly Stormbolt too. Any other like little tips and tricks kind of things that are a little bit out of the norm that people might not be thinking about?
No, I mean, I think it's kind of comes down to like when you trade defensive utility for offensive utility again. Pretty common theme with tanks and in this expansion, especially Prot Warriors and Blood DKs. It comes down to feel. You know, so much is feeling there. and how much you want to grief versus how good you want to look on the damage meters. I think the big kind of like things to consider that isn't just like part of your rotation, it's not part of your, normal thing that you do, is the two-hand weaving and shield blocking versus shield barrier, and understanding how good of a defensive tool shield barrier is compared to shield block. And like we were talking about earlier with death siphoning versus death striking, focus on that stuff when you got a good grasp on things. Like, don't be the first thing you do on your brand new Prot Warrior. Don't have that be set up a Swifty one-shot two-hand swap Bladestorm macro, Focus on that stuff once you feel comfortable with what you're doing, and then you can kind of do this niche GCD gaming cringy stuff. Like if you want to use Stormbolt, for example, to two-hand weave, then you have to pair your weapon swap GCD with another ability. So like you use Shield Slam, for example, then you use your two-hander, so it kind of intersects that GCD, and then you can use your Stormbolt macro that puts you back into a one-hander after it's cast as well. But yeah, it's that's for later stuff for sure.
Yeah. Cow, you got any little tips and tricks you've been using in dungeons?
No, but for raid, it's mainly just a Swifty actually external for your tank would be very helpful. If even a Prot Warrior had that, because you now play a tank, you also understand as a Prot Warrior when your friend is going to take damage.
Yeah.
Assuming you have one in there. So that might save their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So I skipped over, forgot to do it, but let's go back, do race. What do you see as the best race for Prot Warrior, Riani?
I mean, I think unfortunately again it's Alliance. Goddamn Oregon.
That Worgen.
Yeah. Everything else is kind of like whatever. I feel like it's similar situation where basically there's a ton of races that will give you 340 or 320. No, was it 340? I think it's 340 stats. Basically everything from Orc to Draenei to Pandas give you like 300 stats. And then, humans, dwarves, even gnomes for, if you're using swords. They all give you pretty much the same. So I really don't feel like there's a big difference in any regard for most Prot Warrior races.
Okay. So are you re-rolling Alliance for that Worgen? Gonna
I think I would probably quit the game sooner. Actually, I take that back. I'm actually an Alliance simp at heart, so
I don't think I've ever played a Worgen in my entire time playing WoW.
No, God no. Worgen is I would never. Just aesthetics wise. My warrior is Blood Elf, so gotta get
Which is actually really good. It is really good for CMs.
Yeah, it's insane for CMs. Like giga insane for CMs.
So if you don't mind sacrificing a little bit of Braid for that, that is a really good one.
Yeah, for sure. It gives some rage as well in raid. Arcane Torrent.
Yeah, what is it, 15 or 20?
I think 15 now.
Okay. Almost gets you to a shield barrier from 0, so I don't know.
Yeah, almost.
So Blood Elf is what you're personally gonna be sticking with on your warrior?
Yeah, I'm not paying for a transfer.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. if anybody in chat has any questions for Prot War, let us know. We can go through those. Otherwise, yeah, that pretty much, I think that pretty much wraps up the Prot War. We got through that one nice and quick. I mean, like you said, Rihanna, a lot of the BDK stuff just kind of carries over, which is nice. So.
Yeah. Indeed.
I guess right now, though, I'll tease our next one, though. We'll be going over Brewmaster, Prot Pally, and Guardian Druid the next time we chat. Yeah, we'll... I'm going to have to actually play a Guardian Druid before that one to be able to talk about it. But, yeah, and then at some point we'll be doing a Mogushan Vault little tank talk, and then we'll probably put Heart of Fear and Toes together, just because those ones sound like they're going to release at the same time, and MSV will be a separate release. Izo wants to know, when not tanking a boss, is it better to use Rage to shield block for big shield slams, or use Rage for Heroic Strike? So
Heroic Strike.
Yeah. And especially if it's you know, an execute range, absolutely execute.
Yeah. Shield block will just cost too much rage.
Yeah. You're not even getting the benefit of, you know, getting some of that rage back from crit blocks at that point also. So
yeah, exactly.
All right. I think that looks like the only question they had.
Oh, one more came in.
Oh. The banners share a CD? No, they do not. They're all separate CDs. So this is one of the parts of Prot War where, you know, you have a lot of buttons to press. So when you ding, I think it's level 87, right? You get all three of the banners. You get the what was that AoE taunt one? I'm blanking on the name right now.
Mocking Banner.
Mocking Banner, yeah. Mocking Banner, which is another change we didn't actually talk about, is you can place your banner like within, I think, 30 yards, and it'll taunt everything onto you. So you can now do your AoE taunt when you're not even next to things, which feels pretty awesome. And you can also intervene your banners, which just a little extra mobility that you can use. But yeah, Demo, Mocking, and Skull Banner, all different CDs, so be looking to use all of those.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that they cannot be placed down at the same time. So if you get a demo banner call when you have your skull banner down, you might want to think about not putting that one down for a while, unless it's super needed.
Yep, good call on that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you for sure, guys, for being here for this. That was awesome. That was a great chat. I think people will get a lot out of that. Rihanna, you want to plug all the stuff you got going on? I know I'll have everything linked in the description, but if you want to just go over all your stuff real quick.
Oh man, yeah. Doing I'm doing it too much at the moment. Too little YouTube and too much everything else. But you can find me on YouTube. Pretty recently reached 10,000 subscribers. That's
a big
pretty
milestone.
Cool. That's a big milestone for sure. And I stream over on Twitch. I stream pretty frequently nowadays, but yeah, it's been a while, or since I streamed last time on Wednesday last time, but over on Twitch, we're on TV, and I think I might have mentioned it a few times here, but I have some guides on Wowhead. For the Protection Warrior and the Blood DK. There are actually a lot more stuff coming out after this week, I think. So that's pretty cool. So, you know, if you do like the Wowhead guides, it really does mean a lot to me going in and rating it 5 stars on the web page. That's a cool thing to do that you can do. So that's my last little plug right there.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, I saw also like in Kata when you like took over like the Bloody K page. You like inherited all the old bad ratings on it. So are we finally on a clean slate? We get to, you know, just get that perfect 5 out of 5 star.
You're never gonna get a 5 out of 5 on Wowhead, but
As close as we could get though.
yeah.
All right, awesome. And I'll have all of that linked in the description. Cow, what about you? I know you stream Twitch, YouTube. Anything else you want to plug?
No, that's about it. Not an author or anything like that, but I do stream all the raids, and all the VODs are available in 1440p on YouTube, all our MSV testing from last couple of weekends, and I also stream on Twitch at Cow Classic.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have all those linked in the description as well. But thank you everybody for joining us. It was a fun chat. I mean, I can't believe we're almost at 4 hours now. It just flies when I'm talking with these dudes. But yeah, like I said, we'll be back again soon for a Prot Pally Brewmaster Guardian Druid trifecta episode. Probably in like 2 weeks. We're basically aiming to do it any weekend there isn't testing, essentially. So look for that in like 2 weeks. And then we'll have some raid ones as well in the not too distant future. But thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, thank you for having me.